A journey begins in the stillness of time. The night is quiet, and the stars above are slowly traversing the black velvet heavens as your body begins to relax and your breath becomes slower and softer. The world about you melts away into silence, and only the gentle whisper of the story remains. Tonight, we travel far beyond memory, to a time before cities, before kings, before even the wind had a name. We begin at the edge of the universe, where the first being stirred in darkness and dreamed the awakening of all things, whispered into the universe of time. You have nothing to do now but listen and breathe, and slowly fall into the story as it winds its way like mist through a forgotten world where gods walked the mountains and seas, followed voices older than the sun. There will be no rush, no fear, just peaceful, slow steps through the broad and beautiful mythos of ancient Greece. The stories passed down in whispers by candlelight retold to children and elders alike under the same moon. You will hear of creation and chaos, of love and jealousy, of power and the slow beat of fate weaving through everything. And as the story unfolds, your mind will wander like leaves on a slow-moving river, drifting gently into dreams. This is neither a lesson nor a test, but a gentle invitation to lie still and let the soft melodies of old stories rock you gently into restful sleep, where the voices of gods and heroes and monsters and stars will be your companions through the night. Allow your eyes to become heavy and your breath to synchronize with the sluggish heartbeat of the old world. Allow the names to roll over you like waves. Allow the forgotten heaven to open slowly above. And now we start. In the deep stillness, before anything had shape, before the light of the sun, and before even the stars had breath, there was nothing but chaos, a sweeping, boundless presence stretching out in all directions, without shape, without voice, without mind, merely a turbulent stillness which held within it all that was ever to be. From this chaos slowly and quietly arose the first beings, ancient powers, not yet gods, not yet men. They were Gaia, the earth, and Tartarus, the depths below, and Eros, the stirring of desire, and Nyx, the shadow of the night, and Erebus, the darkness between the moments. Gaia was the earth, the stone, the hills, the mountains, the face of the world beneath our feet. Her breathing made the sky, and her dreams gave birth to new life. Out of her flesh sprang Uranus, the sky, her equal and offspring, who would bend above her in a great curve, carrying the stars that would follow. Together, Gaia and Uranus produced mighty beings, the Titans, 12 children of enormous strength and size, who were the bones and storms and rivers of the world, each of them holding a piece of the early world in his hands, each of them immobile and silent and waiting. But Uranus was cruel. He was also afraid of his children and their might, and he hid them in the ground within Gaia herself, and she cried out in agony, because though she loved him, she could not stand to be filled with darkness and silence, and so she plotted in her cunning way a change. She addressed her children softly, and just one of them heard her refer to Kronos as the youngest and the most perceptive, and the one who looked on his father with silent hatred and silent eyes. Gaia offered him a knife not made of metal, but of sign and of time. And with this, Kronos stood in silence for the appropriate time. And when Uranus came back to Gaia, again Kronos rose up with the knife, and with a single blow he plunged it into the sky, and broke it from the earth. The blood of Uranus fell upon the sea, and out of it would come new things dreadful and beautiful. But for the time being, the sky fell silent, and the world took a new breath. Cronus liberated his brothers and sisters, and they came into the world no longer hidden, no longer dreaming that they were the rulers, now the powerful Titans ruling the seasons, the winds, the waters, and the fires in balance, but deep within the texture of time. A ferment began to brew, for fate never ends with a single throne. Kronos was mighty and just in ruling, but he was afraid of what had been foretold that he would be, deposed by his own son, the way he had deposed his own father. And thus he vowed an oath that no child of his would ever revolt against him, that no child would live to look at the sky. His children were born separately, and separately He swallowed them intact and buried them deep inside him, as his father had buried him deep inside the ground. The world was still again imprisoned in the silence of waiting. But Rhea, his queen, was weary of this perpetual silence and mourning, and when she gave birth to her youngest son, she hid him away, wrapping up a stone in swaddling clothes and substituting it in its place, and he swallowed it in ignorance, and so the child was saved. This boy was Zeus, hidden behind a mountain face, raised by nymphs and fed on the goat's milk as the world atop it turned round, and the Titans ruled, and the sky waited patiently in quietness. Zeus became secretly powerful and radiant, and full of the fire of change, and when he was grown up, he returned to the world above, no longer a child, but as a force of thunder and light, and he set out looking for the old ones, the Titans, and the mystery of his birth, and he began to move the world again. He offered Kronos a draught. It compelled him to spew up his swallowed children. One by one, they emerged fully matured, and full of the agues of liberty, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, all retreating once again into the light and standing together with their brother. Altogether, they rose not from hate, but from a sense of duty to bring back order and to end the era of terror. The war that followed shook the sky and broke the mountains, a war of Titans and gods that went on for 10 years, shaking the bones of the earth and stirring even the stars in their serenity. And when war finally ceased, it was the gods who trod the broken earth, and the Titans below it chained, and deep beneath in Tartarus, guarded by beasts that would never sleep, the old world was quiet once more, and a new age had arrived, the age of the Olympians, who would etch their names in wind and wave and flame, who would dream and love and rage, and tell the stories that would echo even after the stars had forgotten their names. There was no form to the world, and no meaning at first. Nothing had any shape and no end, but it lay out like a still ocean with no waves. No moon, no stars, no sky, no earth, nothing but the black endless void that the old people talked about as chaos. This was not chaos of noise and confusion, but profound stillness of everything and nothing all. Together, a place where no noise stirred and no time passed, but a panting space that held the seed of all things, waiting to be stirred. Out of chaos, the first forces, slow and gentle, moving like fog on still water, they did not speak or fight, but became the first was. Gaia, the earth, round and full and unchanging, with a quiet strength that could hold mountains and rivers and forests in her arms then. Tartarus, the deep, dark pit beneath the world, a realm of shadow and sleep where time wandered aimlessly, and below nothing stirred, and high up was Eros, the force of love and desire, not passion, as we know it, but the quiet pull that draws one thing to another, the breath that makes two become one, the slow heartbeat that begins all life. As Gaia was created, she carried Uranus the sky. He stretched himself over her broad and boundless, and they lay together. Sky and earth meeting at the horizon, veiled in stillness, they bore the Titans, great ones, who would eventually create the world slowly and firmly. And vast among them were Oceanus, whose waters would someday surround the world, and Hyperion, whose light would someday blaze as sun and moon and stars, their names floated on the breeze like a breath deep and old and eternal. They did not hasten, they did not quicken, they simply were. But even from these slow and ancient ones, the seeds of transformation began to ferment. Uranus feared his children and hid them deep within Gaia, swoon thrusting them down into her belly, where they were unable to shift. She groaned with the weight, not with anger, but with grief, a slow hurt that spread across her hills and valleys until Cronus, one of the Titans, consented to help her. He did not bind or cry or thunder. Instead, he took the curved sickle she presented him with and stood still for night to cloak itself. When Uranus came to lie beside her again, Cronus reached out and hacked the sky away. From the blood of Uranus that fell to the ground, new beings, the Furies with unblinking eyes, the giants who slept on mountains and trees, and the Malaya ash tree nymphs who breathed secrets to the wind. And in the ocean where the foam caressed the water, Another being began to stir slow and soft and quiet the goddess. Aphrodite was born. She emerged not from a storm, but from a wave that came gently to the beach her, hair streaming behind her like seaweed in the tide, her eyes as calm as the open sea. Cronus succeeded in ruling the world, and time passed not as we know it with tick-tock seconds and the hours flying by, but like the steady trickle of water from a rocky outcropping, slow and unshakable. The world revolved on his rule, and Rhea, his sister, was his queen, and they had hundreds of children. But Cronus remembered what his father had taught him, that one of his own would bring him down. So he swallowed each baby as it was born, not with any haste, but with a grim unspokenness that hung in the air. Child was swallowed up in his belly without a word until there was only one left. Rhea could bear it no longer. The silence of her grief had become too great, too wide, and so she crept away to Gaia, who still remembered the agony of her own anguish. And there the two hatched a plan when her youngest child was born. Rhea wrapped a stone in swaddling and offered it to Cronus, who swallowed it whole without a glance, and the child. Zeus was hidden on a remote hilltop, where the soft breeze would sing him to rest, and the walls of the cave would wrap him close like the arms of his mother. And when Zeus grew up, he neither roared nor thundered, but listened and watched the world turning in the stars above. He learned the secrets of the earth and the animals. Breath he went with stealth and caution until he was ready, and then he came back not for anger, but for determination. He made Cronus drink, and it made him cough and vomit, and the children, whom he swallowed, came out one by one. They came forth reborn, full of life and power and remembrance, and together they went to the high mountain Olympus, where the air was thin and clean, and there established their home. And thus the age of the gods began. Slow and sacred and vast Cronus, his few but unyielding children, the mountain's first Hestia, the hearth, the home light in every house, the unassuming guardian of flame, who did not seek reward or power, but only peace then. Demeter, the earth mother, whose fingers could plant seeds into grain, whose sorrow would one day call forth the long winter, and whose joy the spring. Then Hera, proud and unyielding, the queen of the gods, whose gaze could still even the loudest voice, and who protected the vows of marriage like a shield. Then came Poseidon, like a tide mighty, an unshakable sea god, his realm limitless and deep, his temper as changeful as waves, gentle at one time and furious at another. And Wantai, Hades, ruler of the dead, not with sternness, but with somber concern, keeping the quiet dead under his watchful care, like a shepherd keeping his flock. And lastly Zeus, ruler of the thunder, Smite, who as yet did not throw lightning, but kept it held in his hand like a promise. Zeus led his brothers into battle against the Titans, not in fire, but as a slow storm gathering strength. Each day they battled not with rage, but with purpose. The earth trembled beneath their feet, and the skies tore apart with sound, but still they moved as one breath, as one step, until Cronus and the ancient Titans were hurled into Tartarus, into that endless abyss where time loses itself and silence holds everything. But out of their shadows they came new horrors, beasts with many heads and unfathomable fire, the gigantic children of earth, S own blood, and Typhon, a fiend of a beast so huge that he filled the sky. His breath was smoke, his hands thunderclouds, and still Zeus stood firm. He did not cry out, he did not flee. He hugged the mountain to his back and waited. And when Typhon sprang, he answered not with rage, but with stillness, with quiet, with the power of the earth at his back. And at last Typhon was entombed beneath Mount Etna, where he sleeps to this day. The world was ruled by now the Olympians, gods of heaven and sea, and harvest of household, and hearth, and death, and love. They created the world not in haste, but in patience, fashioning mountains with long hours, stocking rivers with thought, watching men come out from clay with awe. And now we drift among them, not as mortals, but as quiet hearers, to a world in which myths swell like fog over lands, and gods walk slowly in clouds and dreams, and the tale continues. And as the tale continues smooth and slow, the story wanders into the folds of time, where gods walk in antique light, and men come and go to the gentle rhythm of myth. Titans used to reign from lofty peaks, crowned in sheer might, their gigantic presence shaking the newly made heavens, as Gaia the earth gave cradle to all in her boundless form, and Uranus. The sky stood rigid above her, the cosmos' firstborn, forged in shadow and storm. When Cronos drew the sickle and slew his father Uranus, the stars trembled in silent awe, not of brutality, but of the unyielding progression of changed seasons passed slowly. And so did ages of gods. The blood of Uranus begat monstrous forms, and the furies and giants stirred in the gentle womb of the world. But the tale does not rush, it unfolds in patience, as Cronos ruled golden and slow-hearted, fearing the oracle spoken on the wind, that his own children would one day usurp his throne, one after one, as Rhea bore. Cronos opened his jaws not with fury, but with the weight of fate, and swallowed whole his children every heartbeat. The toll of old bells slow, and deep into his vast belly they went, until Zeus alone was secretly concealed in the quiet of a cave on Crete, nourished by benevolent nymphs and buzzing bees that hummed like a nursery rhyme in darkness as the world crept slowly and ascended. Zeus grew with restrained strength, no hurry, no fury, but only the still growing of purpose, the coming of dawn after black night. And when he returned, cloaked in tranquility of storms, he brought Cronos a goblet fashioned not from poison, but from memory, and forth came his siblings and sisters in slow line, like dreams waking from sleep. Hestia, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, Demeter, each flushing back into being like stars at dusk. The war that followed the Titanomachi boomed through the firmament. But here the battles are not savage. They resemble the slow rolling of tides, the long outbreathing of mountains pushing the old gods down into the ground, while the new ones rise to gentle thrones on Olympus, shaped not in haste, but in the quiet going of time. Zeus filled the sky, Poseidon the sea, Hades the underworld and balance, returned to the still breathing of myth. Hera lingered behind the cloudy veil of sleep, her eyelids heavy wise, and waiting ever wakeful over the slow rituals of birth and marriage. The hearth glowed where Hestia watched her endless vigil of fire, not leaping, but smoldering warm in the center of temples and homes. Poseidon agitated the sea, not with uproar, but in the languid pull of the moon tides that rippled like lullabies upon sand and rock. The gods did not hasten their movements in this dreamlike telling they moved, like wind in tall grass, like sun at back of olive trees. Settling Athena burst not with noise, but with still genius from Zeus. Forehead grown to her full might, her armor gleaming like morning dewdrops, her plan developing in soft syllables of guile and trickery. And Artemis the wild huntress moved through woods as still as dropping petals, moonlight tracking her footfalls, while her brother Apollo pulled strings of golden light, spreading music through the quiet world. The tale continues in the still night along the path of the divine smith, Hephaestus, who had been thrown from the heavens not in fire, but in a slow descent onto soft waves, and nursed by sea nymphs who taught patience of waves and craftsmanship of coral and shell. And he shaped wonders not in haste, but in steady hand and gentle, fire shaping gifts and instruments glimmering like stars asleep. The love stories told between these gods are not of desire, but of tender longing, of tender glances over time. Aphrodite rising not in blast, but in a blossom of foam from the sea. Her beauty such as the stillness before morning, when all things stop breathing and sensing their own time, and her presence petrified. The world around her, as Ares the war god was silent at her side, his heart a slow drum in awe, and Dionysus came last, not in madness, but in silent debauch, strolling among vines and shadows laughter, echoing like wind in empty amphorae, a god of wine and gentle madness, holding court under stars that blazed with slow delight. His rituals not mad, but visionary footsteps in candlelight, where sleepers danced within dreams and lost their daytime wounds. And in his vision, even sorrow became song. So many threads on, so each one slow and soft, the tale of Persephone who walked quietly through fields in bloom, not lured out of fear, but quiet curiosity to the underworld, where Hades waited not as captor, but as courteous host, extending not chains, but pomegranate seeds that glowed like embers in the dark. And she remained a while within his dark realm, as seasons sighed around her, and Demeter mourned in soft grief until her daughter rose again each spring, and thus the rhythm sustains like the quietness of eternal twilight. Such myths enfold you not in noise, but in stillness, stories laid like fabric spread loosely upon the shoulders of sleep. And as the gods move through their soft infinitudes, the world beneath them reverberates with their gentle motions mortals, shaped by divine hands that stroke the world not in anger, but in deep infinite gentleness. Heroes too step out in quiet stride weapons, not in screams, but hearts burdened with dreamlike resolve. Perseus soaring through the star-swept night, his shield reflecting back stars as he meets Medusa, not in rage, but in the stillness of fate, and her gaze is not a scream, but a whisper that turns all into stone. Weapons as dreams hung in their final frame, and Andromeda waits not in fear, but in soft surrender, staring at waves and stars meld together. Heracles walks not like a brute, but like a weary wanderer, each labor another page in the book of slowness, his power becoming his strength, not wild, but contained in intent, hoisting beasts and taming rivers, like a horticulturist, pruning unruly roots. And as he ascends up to Olympus, it is not in fire, but in slow burning radiance, a candle brought home. Orpheus strums his lyre beneath the hills, his music wafting like flowers down to Hades, hoping not to break rules, but to moderate them, his ardor for Eurydice, still burning as a lantern. And when at last he turns, his mourning is not raucous, but thick a breath inhaled, too long and exhaled too fast. And even in bereavement the song persists that Argonaut's journey is well, but dream not tempest their ship Argo creaks like a tired cradle, and Jason's quest more like treading fog, each feels a soft ripple on the water. Medea's eyes not sharp, but spacious like a familiar tune, you know until it is sung again. Achilles and Hector walk through Troy, like slow heavy dancing seers their battle, not thunderous, but richly rhythmic, a duet sung beneath stone walls, where even the gods grow weary of their interminable path to rest and listen. And Helen stands not proud, but apart her beauty, a spell which seizes time in a slow long look. And Odysseus wanders not in frantic test cases, but in winding fantasy, his oar on his shoulder as he walks by the whispered islands, where sirens trill, not to lure, but to soothe. And Calypso does not cling, but mourns slow and soft like rain, forgotten of the sun. And when finally he returns to Ithaca, it is not triumph, but again peace that settles his hearth. Penelope weaving and unwearing her watchfulness with poise. Each myth a pebble smoothed by centuries, each name a soft bell rung at dusk. And as this chapter is finished, the story isn't over it. It only turns the page, the gods still watching, the mortals still dreaming, and the night still holding everything in its gentle arms. Breathe now and let your mind drift. Like leaves upon quiet water, the story will be waiting for you, just beyond, still whispering, still unfolding. The world was yet young, when heaven's blood seeped into the soil, waiting in breathless awe above what had just transpired. And out of that heavenly wound, new power started, stirring up not from peace, but from the breaking of trust and the breaking of eternal silence. From that blood-red rain the Furies' offspring were born, not from joy, but from vengeance with eyes. Remembering all the screams that sounded in the first treachery they drifted through the ages like a thread of boundless fire, gasping their howls into the ears of anyone who dared to disturb the divine harmony of the cosmos. They forgot not, and they forgave not. They kept in their hearts the memory of spilt blood, and in their steps the judgment of ancient law. They slept not nor rested, but roamed in dreams and shadows, drawn to guilt as wolves to a wounded fawn, warders not of peace, but of consequence. And from the shattered sky the gigantic great forms hammered out of wrath, and the earth pledged to rise anew. when the age of the gods dared to lose the rhythm of ancient strength beneath. Their feet they waded like sleeping mountains barely beneath the surface, their rivers filled with lava and primeval wrath. But although discontent still fumed in rebellion, Gaia the Earth Mother did not sleep. She who had seen worlds born and die still held her, breath drawn tight, a whisper, a soft promise that the world would mend even in pain and balance. One day returned by her children's hands. She called forth spirits from the roots and rivers, soft shapes, from bark and flower, from moss and breeze. The nymphs were born guardians of springs, of forests, of sacred clearings. Their laughter like the breeze passing through olive leaves, their footsteps scarcely touching the ground they waited. They were the gentle guardians of hidden glades and soft streams, places unbothered by storm, or wore their spirit, reminding even the gods that not all power is rage, that some powers communicate in petals and mature in patience across centuries of quiet and illumination. And although the world gave relief to his tender children above on his stony throne, Kronos sat in a grasp that would not relinquish. He sat like a shade stiff in time, awaiting signs of revolt, his hand always upon the chilly scythe, the same that once rearranged the order of the heavens. Though at first the rebel his heart presently raced with fear, the prophecy was too explicit, and Gaia had spoken once again that his son would arrive and do to him what he had done unto Uranus. So his days grew cold and his nights dark, haunted by nightmares of an inescapable doom. Rhea his queen passed through the Author's halls with tears in her smile, her hands ever warm, but eyes far away. She bore him children shining with divine promise aglow, like stars fall into the human world. But all delight was evanescent, for Kronos seized each one and swallowed them as soon as they breathed. Hestia, born of hearth's fire in her breast, was swallowed in silence. Demeter, who would make fields bloom one day and call the wheat's golden thrum, was seized with no shout. Hera, the future queen, was lost in darkness. Hades and Poseidon followed in their wake, swallowed like dying embers in a cave with no breath. And still Rhea endured sorrow in concealing, her womb wound with grief, her slumber filled with lullabies that did not find ears. She implored the stars to help her, to protect one child from this disease. And finally, when Zeus stirred within her, she fled under Gaia's urging to the sacred cave of Crete. There beneath stone and moss, with goat's milk and starlight, she bore alone, cradling the infant, whose wails sounded like thunder in a storm at a great distance. She wrapped a stone in cloth and offered it to Kronos, who swallowed it, believing fate was still, and slept again unpacific. But the child grew in secret, his limbs toughened by mountain air and cave water, his eyes aglow with wisdom, his spirit already reaching towards heaven as he sucked on the horn of Amalthea and listened to the singing of bees and nymphs, whose lullabies promised justice, and the weight of history. Time moved slow as honey and deep as the sea, until Zeus was no longer a youth, but a power of balance, with wisdom in his stillness and purpose in his breathing. He did not come in wrath, but in knowledge, and Metis guided him with a plan based on cunning and tempered by the profound intent of destiny. He tricked Kronos into imbibing wine-flavored beverage, but the seed of liberty and the ancient deity collapsed, spitting up his swallowed offspring, one by one, as if the past could no longer be held in check. Each offspring reborn, garbed in light and remembrance, their eyes agape with knowledge of their origins. The six no longer dispersed, no longer in the ground. They looked at the sky and the earth and the deep, and knew that the world could no longer sleep in terror. Their banishment shared became the basis of opposition, and thus the war was fought, the Titanomachy, destroying all of existence from its center. 10 winters the struggle persisted, 10 summers devoid of music. Every hill echoed with cries, every sea boiled with rage. In storm the heavens roared with bolts, hurled by Zeus. The earth yawned open by the fury of Poseidon, and the underworld itself trembled as Hades stood up. From the shadows emerged forgotten allies, the Cyclopes again, with one eye and hearts ablaze, crafting lightning bolts. Like shooting stars for Zeus tempering the trident, it could call the sea to rise for, Poseidon shaping the helm of invisibility, for Hades whose silence would be his greatest asset. And the Hecaton Shires once imprisoned, now free-flung stones with 100 hands, their voices resounding like falling cities shattering the stars from their paths, cutting gashes in time and heaven as they fought the Titans, who clutched to preserve the old order with stiffened fists and unyielding hearts. And when the final breath of war was snuffed out, when the final yell was drowned by wind, the Titans were broken their strength, unspun like tattered cloth, Kronos tied and hurled into Tartarus, guarded by the very beasts he once imprisoned, doomed to exist in a silence greater than death. The sky gradually lightened, twinkling with newly born stars as if the heavens themselves exhaled in relief. The brothers threw lots to divide the world. And Hades took the underworld, where souls would whisper, and rivers ran with memory. Poseidon claimed the sea, where storms slept, and whales sang. Zeus filled the sky broad and vacant, where thunder dances and clouds dream he ruled. Olympus, which soared like a marble fire from the earth's belly, its peak capped with snow, its halls carved out of wind, its corridors echoing with the birth of a new age. Temples bloomed on hills, statues sculpted by mortal hands, stretched toward their gods, myths poured from rivers, and birdsong on fire and scrolls and breath the Olympians. Era had arrived, not perfect, not peaceful, but exploding with tale and form and song. Even in that peace, however, the echoes remained, the sound of Titans beneath stone, the wind of furies in forgotten shadows, the laughter of nymphs beside still springs, and the memory of a sky once torn and stitched up, now holding stars that remember it all and still shine. Now let the story settle, as dust on weathered stone thaw by the light of fire moving across worn marble. Stay in the silence that follows mighty tempests, and realize that even gods learn to come out of fear and shape the world not with power, but with the promise of equilibrium and breath. Shut your eyes now, and let the myths evaporate like mist off fields let, your breathing slow like a river easing down to the sea, and let sleep descend as it descended upon the first gods, not as an ending, but a holy stillness offering the promise of what the dawn might hold. From Titans to Olympians, the gods awakening and the shaping of worlds. The ancient world held its breath beneath heavenly skies, heavy with change, as the children of the original dawn walked quietly in the shadows of forever, their fates woven in secret, and the unseen threads of destiny that stretched farther than mortal sight, and even the gaze of stars. Zeus stood now beneath Olympus' marble columns, his eyes like storms at peace, but ready to emerge, his heart unwavering, but untamed, for he knew that the weight of all existence would soon be in his, and his siblings' hands bound together by blood and uprising. The corridors whispered around him, with memories of wars fought and won not by swords, but by the quiet power of faith and the sacred, equilibrium that could be found only through harmony, and not through fear or vengeance. A new order rising from the ashes of the old Poseidon, whose voice was the low music of oceans, waited patiently feeling the rhythm of tides. And currents under his fingers, the sea, whispered secrets of bottomless depths and sliding sands. A kingdom broad and wild, shaped by the breath of wind and wave, and endless time. Hades moved in shadows, his kingdom of silence. Not a land of sorrow, but a resting place where souls were at peace, and stories could breathe between moments. His eyes held the weight of worlds, unseen, a quiet power that maintained the balance between life and death. The siblings stood beneath the boundless sky, their hands brushing the winds, and their voices rising like a prayer to the stars, calling forth a new age when gods and mortals would dance in the light of stories yet to be told, the dawn of Olympus, where the threads of the fates would be spun into golden tapestry. The ground responded accordingly. Rivers widened and mountains grew, forests rooted themselves deeper like fists, nurturing secrets while the gods mapped their places in the boundless terrain of time, where every brook and boulder would contain their whispers and every breeze would tell their tales. In this sacred moment, The ancient rhythms pulse slow and strong, instructing all that. Creation is a breath, a dance, a dream that flows forever through shadow and light, and in that passage the gods receive their strength and their peace, their myths becoming the lullabies of a dream world. The skies above moved in endless shades of dark indigo, lightening to pale cerulean, as morning stretched its gentle hand over the horizon. The stars dimmed, slowly bowing out to the soft warmth that seeped like a blessing over the sleeping world. The winds carried a hush, the soft stirring of a world waiting to awaken with quiet respect. Beneath the vast sweep of heaven stood the mountains, as eternal guardsmen their peaks. Kissed by the sun of morning, the valleys cradled by shadows still dark and cool. And in these sacred places moved the gods unseen, their presence felt in the gentle rustle of leaves, the soft lap of streams, and the sigh of air that touched the skin like a lover's kiss. Zeus walked slowly through the olive groves, his feet silent on the earth, the scent of wild herbs and blooming flowers surrounding him like a gentle prayer, the weight of his destiny upon his shoulders heavy, yet familiar, for he was sun and king, the keeper of thunder and sky, a bringer of storms and rain. His eyes lifted to the clouds that idly drifted by on a canvas painted by time and destiny. Hand he felt the power of the lightning flowing deep in his veins, a rush of energy wild and full of years, yet tempered by wisdom that had arrived through pain, and the whispers of the ages, compelling his hand to a future yet unwritten. Poseidon listened to the murmurs of the sea, his kingdom vast and undiscovered, a realm where light undulated beneath the surface and shadow, seethed with mysteries older than memory, his trident next. To him a symbol of strength and change, for the seas are constantly in movement, and so also are the hearts that rule over them. The salt air breathed into his lungs, the crash of waves in the distance, a hymn of endless motion that echoed within his heart. And beneath, the waves, creatures of every shape and hue, swam through underwater kingdoms forged of coral and pearl, a hidden world alive with magic and wonder, patiently waiting for the touch of gods and mortals alike. Hades sat solitary in the quiet depths where shadows were cool, and long his kingdom, a realm not of darkness, but of rest, a realm where souls were peaceful, and the cycle of life continued unseen by mortal eyes. His eyes calm and steady, a quiet guardian of ends and beginnings. Around him, the fields of asphodel stretched far and wide, a sea of pale flowers, gently swaying in the still air, their faint fragrance. A reminder that even in endings there is beauty and grace, that life and death are inextricably bound, like strands in the tapestry of being. The gods gathered once more beneath the vast sky, their voices joining together in a chant that rode the wind, a hymn of promise and power, the shaping of fates, the shaping of worlds, their hands reaching out to take up the threads of time that stretched out beyond the horizon and beyond the stars. The earth itself leaned in to listen. The rivers flowed with renewed vigor, the forests alive with gentle music, and the mountains high and unshakable all bore witness to the beginning of a new age, when gods and mortals would sit and share stories beneath sun and stars. The sacred rhythms pulse like the slow and constant heartbeat through the fabric of the world, recalling to all that creation is a song, a dance, a dream that undulates through shadow and light, through birth and death, and through the endless cycling of days and nights. It was within this current that the gods found not only power but peace, a harmony that would echo through the centuries, carried on the gentle breeze. The crashing waves and the gentle rustle of leaves, the myths becoming lullabies that would cradle a sleeping world into visions of light and magic. The breeze rustled along the olive groves up Mount Olympus with the fragrance of warm soil and far-off water, as if even the wind recalled the first airs of the gods, and the quiet before them, Athena stood upon the great rock cliffs, her eyes looking out towards the horizon where earth touched sky and knowledge touched mystery. Her mind quiet and boundless, her thoughts a tapestry of facts, war, dreams, justice, and wisdom that surrounded her gently soul. She did not require fire or rage, but her power came as the heavy beat of a drum in the distance, ancient and unyielding a guardian. His kindness veiled in restraint, her strength founded in balance, not in devastation nor terror. Apollo stepped softly along a sunbeam trail, where petals dropped at his feet, and the lyre on his shoulder hummed with unseen songs yet to be heard. His arrival brought light and peace, and the atmosphere around him shimmered softly, like the morning mist rising from the sea. His voice called out beyond the hills, not thunder, but a warm memory, as though the past itself was speaking gently through him of tales of events to be, and the languid turning of time beneath a sun that never truly set. He had looked beyond the eyes of men. The horizons of fate rolled up like a scroll in his imagination and in every playing of his. There was warning, and there was awe, promise, and foretelling. A subdued reminder that light also makes shadows, and even happiness has roots that reach down into the soil of sorrow. Artemis moved ghost-like across the dark forest, her footfalls soundless, her bow unstringed, but within reach, and the silver moon leaving a low path behind her, as if tracing the silent dance of one familiar with isolation and power. The animals watched her pass by, not in wonder, but in reverence. The deer lifting their heads, and the wolves crouching, low as if to acknowledge a queen born not of power, but of the stillness loveliness of wild things and the neglected. Stillness between stars. She addressed the darkness in silence, not in words, but in being and in response. The world spoke back a language known only in the stillness, a bond between form and freedom, between prey and hunter. Dionysus walked between the vineyards, his hands tracing over ripe grapes, heavy with juice and recollection, his laughter deep as if vines themselves were exchanging secrets from him that only he could understand and only wine would reveal. His power was not in war or wind, but in rhythm and release within the holy tumult that comes before clarity, the madness before wakefulness. The dream that teaches more than any waking truth could ever hope to provide. Being a follower meant going down the road, between happiness and madness, between melody and silence, between the beat of the drum and the protracted, slow quiet that follows the last note as it fades away. Demeter was in. A gold-grain field, the ground warm against her hands, and the sky wide and waiting her, breathing slow and intent, her heart thudding in rhythm with seeds, pushing below and stalks curving above. She did not insist, but nurtured, and in her care, the earth yielded richness and remembrance. Every season a hymn, every root a story, every orchard a soft murmur of loss and renewal, again and again. Even in mourning she had strength, for it was she who taught the world how to begin again after loss, how to bloom after cold, how to dream in the midst of famine and find spring still. Present beyond the bitter silence of winter Hermes, journeyed back and forth among the worlds his sandals, brushing against the dust of centuries-old ways, but just enough to keep his feet on the ground. His eyes roguish yet deep, and his hands forever grasping messages that could shift the course of everything with a breath. He had known shadow and light, and in his laughter there was an ancient wisdom, as if time itself had once walked along beside him, and words been his original companion. He whispered truths in sleeping ears, and wrote riddles on travelers' footprints his way never set, his tales ever unspooling like parchment, torn by the wind revolving endlessly. Ares stood on the edge of a wide valley in which the sun glinted from deserted shields and discarded swords, his muscles strained and his eyes fixed not on triumph, but on the strange calm that follows tempests when even war is forgotten to remind of peace. He was fire and rage, yes, but also breathlessness of quiet before battle, the quivering silent fingers that touch and the unspoken hurt behind every cry of victory or scream of rage. To know Ares was to know the unedited rhythm of the world when it hurts and heals at once, a god who did not desire love, but who understood it in its most brutal form. Sacrifice safeguarding and savage passion Aphrodite stood on the beach where foam lapped its sand, her hair blown by wind and her eyes reflecting the light of stars which had looked on pining since the first heart was created. She didn't need temples, since the world itself was her altar. Each glance between lovers, each missed heartbeat, each gentle touch freely given without desire or design. Her beauty was not a weapon, but a language, a deep echo speaking to what is most fragile and most powerful in every soul, the need to be seen, to be held, to be remembered, even in the quietest corners of life. Hephaestus labored far down underneath the mountains, where soft and endless fire burned, and each blow from his hammer reverberated through the earth's bones, fashioning dreams from molten memory. He wasn't handsome, and didn't need to be. His beauty was in creation, in the manner that he mended what was broken and remade. It knew the manner in which he shaped the unshaped, and gave form to what others merely dreamed. His fingers were scarred, yes, but also miracles, and in the midst of his forge, he forged beauty from flames, not out of flattery, but because it was needed, and he knew that gods themselves require foundations strong enough to carry eternity. Hestia huddled near the fire, her flame never wild, but ever present her warmth gentle and constant a light, not of fame, but of comfort, the fire that waits without demand, that burns without devouring. Her silence was not emptiness, but peace, and in her stillness there was a warrior's wisdom, a greater kindness than tactics, a strength more enduring than fame. She tended the center of it all, the house, the heart, the place, where all quests begin, and to which all stories hope to wind their way. Back at last, not with noise, but with the quiet shine of belonging. All together, the gods journeyed upon the fabric of time, their presences woven into seasons, and storms into births, and goodbyes into hymns, sung not knowing, and prayers spoken into breeze without hope of response. Their tales were not myths, but the whisper of history, heartbeat pulsating in every moment of bliss, every trial of grief, every vibration of wonder that still speaks to us from the edges of remembrance. They are not gone, but sleeping, not dumb, but listening, their stories enwound in ours, like strands in a larger tapestry. And every time we dream, they wake again, rising step by step with the break of thinking under their care, the world enlarged, slow and sweet, the sky filled dark with stars, and the earth warm with ancient secrets, the gods above and beneath, softly directing the beat of a universe, perpetually dreaming. And there in that dream we enveloped safely in their myths and recollections, catch the soothing lullaby of ancient time releasing, thought releasing sound, and sinking deeper into sleep, where all stories begin. The wind whispered low across the quiet ridges of Mount Olympus, where the sun-touched clouds snaked gently around the high pillars of halls divine, and the air was spiced with stars and dreams not yet born under the vigilant eyes of old gods, who did no longer desire power, but continued to bear it in their calm presence and the gentle power of purpose, stitched in the fabric of eternity. Apollo strolled alone beneath the lengthening shadows of dusk, his fingers mapping out the inaudible strings of music that hummed in the air, like an ancient forgotten melody that was sung from between the crevices of crumbling stone and luminescence. His eyes still burned with memory of fire, but his step was languid, serene, extended by a tune which only the gods could possibly hear, and even they but marginally, for it was prior to word or voice. Artemis walked in the cold quiet of distant forests, her bow resting silently at her side, no longer strung in haste, but a reminder of when she stalked not merely beasts, but silence itself, her breath blending with the scent of pine. And moonlight, her spirit bound with the wild heart of the forest, each step a promise to keep the sacred balance of stillness and motion between life and the ever-turning wheel of seasons. Ares lounged beneath the crooked olive tree, arms crossed but unslackened, eyes no longer blazing with anger, but smoothed by extended reflection, for even the god of war had grown weary of conquest, and had found a sort of strength in restraint, learning that power could be attained not in victory, but in knowing when not to raise the sword, when to withdraw, when to put your hands on the ground and feel its soft pain. Athena, sitting on the white steps of an old temple wind, catching at the hem of her robe, her eyes on the horizon, not in war, but in contemplation of wisdom, as it had flowed down through the ages like water in a narrow creek, carrying with it shards of old truths worn smooth by time, and touch her voice, no longer commanding, but teaching softly with the sound of rain on stone and the relentlessness of dawn rising again and again. Demeter swept her hands over the curving rows of wheat, golden in her hands, the thrum of life building as ground shook under the saws, and the sun burst through the undulating tips of grain. She no longer mourned chilly winters, but welcomed them as relief, a page turned in the endless book of return and renewal, her sorrow now a memory crumpled gently among petals of spring. Like a pressed flower conserved, not for sadness, but for love, Dionysus wandered where the vines were thickest, and the sweet decay hung heavily in the air. His laughter, quieter now, less frenzied, but still full like wine, spilled into a golden cup his sybarites, had given way to gatherings of dreams of shared stories and open hearts. His ecstasy burned away into ease a soft song under a crescent moon, where gods and men sat side by side and let the night rock them until sleep claimed their thoughts. Hermes no longer hurried rim to rim of the world, but paused every so often to listen to the stories. He once only bore his sandals soft on the grassy path, between lives his laughter a flicker on the wind down a child's ear, or pages turned too deliberately the turn of a book. His coming like spring as first touch unobserved, but felt a reminder that all roads demand minutes of respite and all messages demand silence to be spoken. Hephaestus by the fire that had ever been his companion, the light gentler now, less furious, the sparks climbing like tiny suns into the black air. He did not hammer in fury, but shaped with purpose, letting the metal speak for itself. And in each sword, each cup, each hinge of a sacred door was his love, his patience, his abiding passion for making, not for destroying, but for wonder, for beauty that lived though the fire should grow cold. Hestia fed the mortal's fires her flame, as regular as ever, never loud, never prideful, but indispensable. Her light cast softly over sleeping faces, over silent suppers, and whispered prayers. Her talent, not showy, but enduring, for in every house, every fire-lit room, every drawn-in warm breath, she dwelled not in temples or legend, but in modest rooms, where life lurches unceremoniously, but elegantly. And thus the gods endured, not in thunder or display, but in the soft cadence of the world, turning in a million small ways each moment a brushstroke upon the canvas of time, that they had painted once with force and now with delicacy, their legends converted to lullabies, their myths rolled up into dreams, their names carried, not by violence, but in the soft hush of water, in the quiet rustle of leaves, in the breath that creeps between sleep and wakefulness. The world no longer bowed beneath them, but breathed alongside them, a friend in eternity, and not a servant. The stars twinkled in slow cadence above their heads, not as seats of power, but as distant flames, protected by the same stillness that cradled the gods themselves. A peace not bestowed, but one with the slow flow of eons and the soft unmaking of once unshakable wishes. Others say that the gods grew fewer, but perhaps they only changed, became the silence in each falling star, the delay between lightning and rain, the quiet before dreams take hold, during the darkest moments of night, where even time pauses and memory becomes legend, and legend becomes sleep, and sleep becomes the only temple which still resounds with the whisper of their names. Softly, softly, always softly. The sun fell low over the edge of the horizon, and the sky ran with amber into dark indigo, as though even the heavens had become tired of beholding the gods fashion the world with hands no longer hesitant, but roughened by time and legend and unspoken offering. And under that ebbing light, the peak of Olympus towered serene and slow breathing its shadows, now long and soothing like lullabies draped upon the earth. Athena roamed among olive groves, her hand on every limb, a breath of memory of wars not fought, and cities not to be her mind, ever following the crossing of wisdom and strife. Her every step an elementary textbook, lesson engraved in stone or page or spear, and yet no blood had been spilled. But within her she carried the blueprint of civilizations blooming and dying in the space between choice and action. Apollo strummed his lyre not to sing, but to regulate the star's heartbeat, with each note cast into the darkness, an impending constellation, a promise to be of melody. And his voice was not loud, but whirled into the wind itself, carried into kings' and shepherds' dreams. Alike the unobtrusive harmonizer in sound and soul Artemis watched him from the border of the woods, not with disapproval, but with the tranquil understanding of one who walks alone, and yet walks with all the ferocity that was about her, gasping with the same breath she had in her chest. The animals that crossed her shadow unperturbed for, in her presence, there was neither authority nor even mere friendship of the sort that is witnessed only under the moonlight and among the trees. Demeter slept beneath a sheaf of golden barley, her hands buried deep in the ground as if rocking the sleeping seeds to sleep, and her heart beat to the rhythm of seasons not yet, turned the winter's grief already side by side with the spring's delight, and in her silence she accumulated all of the feasts and famines of the world, both desperate to bloom with her will. Dionysus danced barefoot on the cliffs, beyond mortal sight his laughter, a strange kind of thunder, low but heady, wild, but not cruel, the vines in bloom under his feet, wherever he trod, as though the stones themselves were not long enough to contain joy. And his cup never drained, not because it got filled up again, but because he spilled out all he had with every sip and spin and song. Ares sat alone, his armor unruffled, his sword honed, but unstrung, looking toward the horizon with a quiet he reserved for the world. And even though the flames of fury still smoldered in his chest, they no longer bellowed, but smoldered like an oil lamp, set upon an altar, awaiting not war, but purpose to be more than an icon of destruction. A god now waiting to listen to purpose rather than tumult. Hephaestus hammered out the future, spark by spark, in his subterranean smithy under the mountain, his hammer, not angry, but unrelenting, with each crack resounding across plains, both divine and mortal. And the fires that engulfed him were not the flames of anger, but of transmutation, metal bending to will, stone vibrating under tension, and each try and each mistake a sacred lesson branded on his palms. And his will, Aphrodite, drifted unseen among mortals, and yet appeared everywhere present, like a wind that makes a notion a longing her smile, not of seduction, but of pity for the suffering that resides in every heart. And her beauty was not flesh, but soul, the type that lit candles in bare rooms and tinged sunsets in forsaken landscapes, because she was not so much love as the cause that anyone still found it in themselves to hope at all. Hermes moved between all worlds, with no effort, his footsteps silent, but his presence undeniable, carrying messages that no one dared send, and secrets. No one dared keep his eyes twinkling with the wickedness of one who knew too much and cared too much. His laughter, the sort to save lives, not because it was benevolent, but because it made. You breathed when you had forgotten to Hestia, crouched by a tiny and unremarkable fire to the multitudes, yet eternal to those who in quietness and stillness perceived in warmth the meaning of being. Her eyes closed as if she listened to the flame of peace itself, consuming her heart's rhythm, keeping pace with the buzz of home and hearth. Her essence being the emptiness between tempest and legend, the guardian of beginnings and secure homes. Together these gods have made not a hierarchy, but a harmony, a constellation of purposes and roles and wounds and dreams. And while they had the power to rebirth the world in one breath, they instead walked softly among it, their tails buried in its earth, their thoughts sung on its wind, and their silence palpable in the space between each heartbeat. The world turned in slow motion under their keeping, not because it was designed to, but because it was heard, seen, tended to. And the ones who walked its earth never knew the full shape of their protectors, only glimpses in lightning or lullabies, or the bend of a tree in the wind. And yet they were enough to make them kneel, dance, dream with open hearts. And even when the era of Titans was done, and the unshaped children of chaos had silenced the breathing of Olympus was still unbroken, and sacred, flowing into the world not thunder, but the slow pulsing of eternity of gods. Not distant, but part of all stories yet to be told around campfires or temple walls or in the mouths of children, fading off to sleep under starlight. And as night veiled the heavens, the gods did not rest from weariness, but wonder, beholding the patterns they had set forth beginning to unfold themselves, not with ultimacy, but beauty each instant unfolding into the next, with all the tremulous beauty of an initial breath, held a moment too long before it is exhaled into the infinite ocean of becoming. And in that release, the gods grew larger than themselves, larger than shrines or names or myths. They grew into the still beat behind the rustling of each leaf, the stillness between waves, the stillness before dawn, the stillness before sleep. And in that stillness there was peace not unbroken, not eternal, but present, always waiting, soft and certain for those who would listen. The sky grew dark to velvet, and the stars flashed like gentle eyes, and Olympus was not a fortress, but a breath, a heartbeat, a beacon of silence in a world forever in motion. The gods above not seeing but dreaming the earth below, and within that shared dream all rested. But beneath that lie there pulsed more than peace. It was potential, the dormant breath of all stories yet to be lived, the first spark of myths. Not yet grown, the twinkle in the eye of a mortal child staring up at the stars and wondering if she too might one day contain a fire in her breast that lights the world in gold and flame. For the gods had not vanished nor dissolved, but had become part of the movement of being no longer separate from the world, but situated within it, flowing in rivers and veins, and the breezes that wind slowly through olive branches and mountainside trails. They had disposed themselves to kneel with creation not above. And in doing so, they became more than divine. They became richly, eternally real, cut into the center of human. Hearts in the scent of rain on dry ground, in the stillness before a newborn cries in the glance. Between two people who share their hurts and choose to remain anyway in the small, brave things that mark the world quietly. And the final gasp of segment 2 holds, not an ending but a stillness, a sacred quiet of brevity between twilight and dream, where the gods sit shoulder to shoulder with us at the edge of the world and listen to the story of life, not to recount it, but to remember it, to consecrate it, to walk through it again in every step we take. Whispers of desire, how love and lust shaped the gods. The cosmos was never quiescent in its dawn, but trilled a song woven of desire and radiance, a song that whirled among the stars and pulsed below upon ancient roots where dreams were curled and waited patiently to awaken the cosmos itself, pulsed not with order, but with the gentle agony of wishing. And out of that pulse was conceived form and fire and flesh. Out of the blackest darkness, where time opened like silken tapestry, the gods emerged not as remote cold masters, but as beings afire with the ardor of creation and desire. They felt all blades of yearning, every softness of caress, forged into the substance of life. Deeply their hearts thundered like storms. Their bodies roared with tempest. Their lips hungered in poetry, and even the air learned to tremble at their lips. Aphrodite rose from the sea foam, not in a wail, but in a whisper so fine that it bent the waves and stirred the flowers at her feet. Her flesh blessed by the sun and sea, her eyes storing up the anguish of every secret longing and every silent night prayer sent into the dark. She walked not but bloomed, and where she trod desire was awakened, as spring was bursting from a sleeping wood. The earth itself breathed with new life at her touch. Eros followed behind, no longer a youth, but a rhythm weaving unseen threads between hearts over temples and warfields in quiet corners, where hearts attracted each other, without knowing why his arrows didn't kill, but flung open ancient doors to naked tenderness soft and free the unseen threads he created were delicate and unbreakable, like the most exquisite lace created by the best hands of fate itself. Even mighty Zeus, the thunderer, whose glance could quiet the hosts, felt himself bend to lust his form, shifting as smoke or flame, slicing through veils and dreams to find those who possessed the fire of divinity in their mortal flesh. He knew that the power of will was no weakness, but one which awakened gods and mortals alike and unspoken. Divine flames smoldering deep beneath the thunder's roar. A soft flame, but unyielding in the boundless darkness of night. Leto hastened quickly over reeds and boulders with twins, whose fates intertwined like vines into the tapestry of everything that would be sought, not only by human terror, but by envious hearts twisted tight by rage and jealousy. Hera sat quietly upon her throne, a woman forged of flame and ice, her silence. Thicker than any curse, but tempered by strength and by sorrow, the weight of her watching bending the roads that all must walk. Apollo raged not only with the light of the sun, but with the raging passion of love. Each note from his lyre, an admission each gaze, a poem given and received in the passing breath of a moment his passion. Immense but fleeting kissed, as if he did never behold again, and disappeared as if he never once possessed his music interlacing. Like ribbons of gold into the air, intertwining dreams into dawn's tapestry. Artemis the wild twin stormed free through forests unmarked by time. Her arrows now rarely fired, but carried still not for killing, but in warning that defense is savage and quieter. Shadow played alongside. Every solitary dreamer girl and every beast that cowers in fear, never wanting to be pursued. Her presence a soft melody woven through, leaves the guardian of those who move unseen under the moon as watchful eye. Even Hades, whose realm was concealed behind mist and silence, had his stillness. Broken by Persephone, whose footsteps carried the scent of life flowers and evening fruit. She did not slip into darkness, but walked into concord with open eyes and hands. Agape, to touch what others feared her, was not tragedy, but the sacred wedding of passion and flower shadow and light, enfolded in endless dance, a story in the transmuted colors. Of seasons and the kiss of breath between life and death. God's love was not soft or gentle, but it was enormous, a force that lifted temples up and destroyed kingdoms that shook mortals and made planets bloom in their stories. Desire was neither shame nor sin, but a sacrament, a divine power that stirred the heavens and awakened sleeping earth to life. This power coursed through all creation as veins, a river of water and of fire, flowing constantly in the hearts of those who dared to feel and dream. So when the stars blushed open and the world held its breath, it was not fear that filled the universe in tribute to gods who loved with such fiery beauty that the sky was a witness. Their wish made constellations, and their yearning. Was the world this lullaby that resounded eternally in soft breezes and lunar waves, where lovers whisper names without knowing why? A melody older than time itself spoke softly at the very center of every night. And beneath the endless roof of sky, the stories spun on and weaving across mortal lives and divine dreams, the threads of fate winding in the hands of men and gods, together in a wild and gentle dance, where every breath carried the weight of love as fierce flame, and every still held the promise of a touch to be. And the world breathed slow in the heat of that never-ending fire. The still of that never-ending fire, the gods tread softly their steps, light upon the earth, their voices gentle and threaded through the hum of stars. The rhythm of ancient beat carried lightly on the wind, and the ground itself was still, holding its breath to catch the holy breath of love's stirring echoing through mountain, river, and sky. In hidden glades where sun filtered through leaves, the smallest flush of new longing was sparked. Shadows lengthened and writhed like smoke in evening air and echoes of old. Promises hung heavy as dawn mist, and all the animals great and small knew the hidden touch of longing that floated just out of grasp in the places between heartbeats. The breath of love blew through the cosmos in soft ripples borne on seas and deserts. It wrapped itself around the shoulders of travelers and the aspirations of children entombed beneath quilts in still rooms. It hummed in the dawn song of the lark and in the gentle curve of a mother as smile enfolded around the fragile promise of tomorrow. In the sweep of night, when stars spun silver threads on darkness, the gods came together, not distant masters, but as keepers of the flame that smoldered low within each heart. And their eyes burned with the low flame of ancient yearning that had sparked the first breath of life itself, and would kindle each heart that followed. There was a story for each of the gods of lack and loss, of wild happiness and soft sorrow, interwoven in the loom of time as threads of gold, and darkness in a tapestry no mortal hand could ever finish, and they sang as one the eternal refrain of love. S ability to make and unmake, to heal and transform, to bind and release. Thus the earth spun slowly under the eyes of gods, who loved not with brutality or decree, but with a heart that burns as the ocean. S storm, a flame unending as the heartbeat of the heart, and within that love the universe found its voice, and every star a song, and every soul a story waiting to be spoken. A dew clung softly to the earth, as the gods strode between worlds both seen and unseen, their presence a whispered thread that wove its path through the mortal existence, like the gentle sketching of tides beneath a moon of silver. Every step rang out with purpose, not in thunder, but in the gentle rhythm of breath and heartbeat, and whispered promise. The very air that enfolded them hummed with immeasurable strength, as if the world itself became aware of their silent passage, and drew in gasping awe and reverence. Athena stood atop a hill over a city, waking slowly in the light, her eyes following the spires and rooftops. She could sense the waking of minds that hungered for wisdom, the hidden hunger for truth buried beneath the clangor of day-to-day living. Her mind, flowing like ripples on still water, each thought a seed sown deep in the rich earth of hope and potentiality. The unobtrusive builder of futures yet to be imagined, the preserver of insight, whispered softly into the hearts of the seekers after knowledge, even in the clangor of the turning world. She brushed the first light of dawn, and it shone like gold threads in the fabric of sky. Her voice was not loud, but carried on the wind through books and workshops and courts, of justice, reminding everyone who listened that knowledge was a light in darkness, a shield against confusion and despair, a beacon for those who lost their way in the labyrinth of uncertainty, illuminating them to clarity and understanding with quiet strength and patience. The wisdom she imparted was not compulsion, but gift to awaken the mind and ignite the soul. Meanwhile, Apollo's music drifted softly over hills and valleys, a melody spun out of desire and light, each note a caress on the soul, a calling to release the beauty hidden in open view in bird. Song and shadow dance his lyre sang with gentle fingers intertwining harmony, not just in sound, but in the very light and color and air itself. His music was the morning breath, weaving dreams into existence, a sacred thread between heaven and earth in the poetry of melody and light, extending even into the most silent places where hope breathed. Artemis strode through ancient forests where quiet held the centuries. Stories her footsteps, as light as autumn, leaves her eyes sharp but gentle, watching creatures both powerful and small. She carried no weapon but fierce stillness, a promise whispered on the wind to those who ran under the branches. Her heart, the defender of the wild, the untiller of imbalance between freedom and safety, a songless melody of survival, echoing through the rustle of leaves and the flash of starlight weaving through branches, revered and ageless. Demeter, as fingers traced the fields of glinting grain, bending in the morning air, she felt the pulse of life in every stalk, the potential of birth and harvest, concealed in every seed her heart answered to the pulse of seasons revolving eternally through sorrow and joy, through death and life, a waltz of giving and taking ageless, and stitched into the fabric of the earth itself. Her presence was the gasping petition of sustenance, the sacred breath of growth and decay that keeps the world and all its children in an unending cycle of love and life. Hestia maintained the holy fire in plain hearths, through the nations whose heat an unspoken vow among and between strangers and loved ones. A quiet haven amidst the chaos of the world, her fire, not consumed or fading, but abiding as the rhythm of home. Keeping space for peace and homecoming, she was the hurricane Si, the gentle light that invited rest and renewal the keeper of sacred silence, where weary hearts came to find comfort and the promise of return to safety and light. Hephaestus labored beneath the mountain, his hammer shaping metal with delicate precision, every strike a dance of creation, transforming raw material into tools of promise and of art. His forge a sanctuary where fire and earth and resolve met to mold wonders, not for war, but for the potential of new. Life his hands weaving enchantment from river stone, shaping the future with patience and with foresight. Every spark a testament to endurance and to the gentle power of transformation bred of travail and of devotion. Aphrodite's laughter was like smooth water running through bazaars and gardens and vacant rooms. Her beauty was not perfection, but the glow of a glance, the power within her to love even pain and fear. She walked among mortals, a hint of hope, a promise that longings made whole as much as they were capable of hurting her presence. The gentle light that healed shattered hearts, and the spark that challenged all hearts to stretch towards union, even in the presence of shadow and loss, a low flame that burned with fierce light in dark night. Hermes between worlds, light-footed and unseen, carrying tidings of mischief and benevolence. His voice the laughter shared in confidence, the flash of awe that kindles adventure and communion. He was the quiet hand that guided ways both great and small through the labyrinth of life and dream. His footprints left hope such as ripples in water, fleeting and timeless the messenger, weaving the tapestry of fate with threads of joy and surprise in plain view, yet known to those who dared to look behind the veil. The gods descended softly beneath the vast vault of stars, their stories and dreams merging like constellations. Written in the darkness of the evening heaven in their quiet, they held the world's breath, a sacred moment full of limitless potential and stillness. As one they were the unspoken choir that lies behind every stroke, the eternal beat. Beneath the flow of time, the invisible makers of the dance that carries all things from beginning to end and back again in an infinitely profound rhythm. Under their vigilant eyes, mortals lived out lives that were none the wiser for the threads of divinity that ran through their days in the turning of the seasons, the blooming of petals, the flowing of the rivers, and the quiet growth of children. Each breath a faint echo of immortal breath, each prayer breathed aloud a note in the eternal song of being, a song penned in silence, sung softly in moments of kindness and courage and love, handed down from generation to generation like a sacred legacy, breathed from soul to soul. The winds carried their laughter, their tears, their ancient songs over mountains and seas, across fields where children dreamed under star-strewn blankets and lovers kissed in shadows soft as silk, the holy breath of creation that is in every moment cherished and appalling as a heartbeat, held just before a sigh in the silence between night and dawn, where all things are possible, and the world holds its breath to hear the tales spoken by the stars and the songs carried on the wind, a tapestry of light and darkness embroidered through the fabric of time. In hidden corners where light and shadow enacted the god's presence fluttered like a burning flame. A glance in the bazaar, a glimpse of a stranger. Smile the courage to forgive and to trust all indications of the divine spark that lived unseen in the secret. Fringes of the world reminding all of oneness and the truth, that no one is alone, that every breath is shared, and every soul one with the whole, a dance of existence, spinning round and round beneath the infinite sky. And so the world turned beneath the watchful gaze of gods, who did not love from distance, but from within their presence, a soft beat concealed beneath the thunder of time, a gentle wave carrying all toward light and peace, for in their love was planted the seed of all things, beginning anew eternally in the dance of twilight, and dawn a cycle with no end, where every end cradled the promise of beginnings again. Like the first kiss of spring, after the long winter sleep, soft and sure as the turning of the earth itself. Under the veil of the ordinary hours, great secrets brood in which fate and freedom intertwined the mortal's choicest ripples like rocks, hurled into still waters, disturbing distant shores of destiny, and the gods gazed, not as masters, but as spectators to the holiness, in every small act of courage, the quiet fortitude of common lives, the might that conquers mountains, and the love that reconstructs worlds. From the empty silence of deserted temples to laughing children chasing fireflies in the fading light from the private tears, dried secretly alone to the voices raised on high in thanksgiving for life and love, the divine infused. Life into all entwining the threads of myth, into the tapestry of human, striving an unending narrative, wherein gods and humans are bound by the unending threads of hope and remembrance and the eternal song of becoming. The midnight sky velvet and vast with hopes and fears of centuries, the stars shone softly as if to say, "You are never alone, the gods and men, myths forever intertwined a waltz of desire and light." Above that carried the weight of the past and hope of tomorrow, a golden embrace that holds past and future in one soft moment of now. And in that endless turning, the gods found not lordship, but a shared heartbeat with all of creation, their stories blending into earth its pulse. The quiet between waves, the quiet in a babyish breath, a love so vast it contained both joy and sorrow equally in balance. Like the turn of the seasons themselves, a sacred dance that sweeps all things through space and time with grace and infinite regard. Thus the gods whispered softly on leaves and rivers amid the blaze of hearths and dawn. It's cold, their presence felt not as command, but as comfort, a reminder that even in silence there is strength, and that every end is but a breath before the next begin in the infinite. Song of life, a melody whispered softly under stars, a lullaby of love and life, unending and unbroken. Darkness closed softly around the ancient temples, where shadows capered in the quiver of torches, and prayers' sighs threaded through cool ritual air. The gods did not hover far away as sovereigns, but as kind custodians of the sacred, set in stone and soul their presence. A quiet throb beneath the hum of ritual and reverence, the air thick with the fumes of smoldering incense, and the weight carried in sacred stone and chant. In the quiet beneath the vaulting sky of stars, Hermes floated as a thread of silver, inscribing unseen routes between worlds, his footsteps lightly agitating dust as he carried words not of command, but of hope and question mirth in his eyes, a fire that kindled hopes in the hearts of wanderers and seekers, both reminding all to take any small step and find oneself on the way to a gigantic gateway, and that every gateway begins with one breath taken in humble courage. Hephaestus worked in silence in the hot fire of his forge, deep inside the interior of his mountain, his hammer shaping not arms, but wonders each stroke. A deliberate note in the symphony of creation his hands, crimson and blistered fashioning beauty out of primeval chaos. A testament to perseverance and the sacred art of change his forge, crucible in which fire and earth, spun together in concert, and raw metals sang songs of becoming under his long-suffering, tireless hand. Aphrodite's presence echoed like a tide of gold through bazaars and serene gardens and lonely rooms as much as her laughter, a soft music that stirred the heart to love in all its terrible and lovely shapes. She went unseen, but deeply felt a reminder that passion was not mastery, but the shared language of linking the balm that healed broken hearts, and kindled the soul as hidden fires, a soft wildfire smoldering deep but unseen beneath the surface of mundane moments, kindling hope where hope had none. The twins Apollo and Artemis, blood and opposition's twin siblings, danced down sunlit valleys and darkling woods. Apollo's songs carried on the wind like golden threads of light that awakened beauty and truth, his music a radiant pulse that sewed hearts and hills into one continuous line, while Artemis' quiet steps marked the wild places where silence was more loud than any voice. Her presence, a wild gentle shield holding the sacred balance of life and death firm in its keeping, her shadow dancing softly beside every girl who dreamed alone and every creature that sought its shelter under the stars. Demeter, as fingers tracing lines of fields, growing up earth singing growth and loss songs her heart, pounding in harmony with seasons turning promise of harvest, intertwined with memory of loss, her love a wild and gentle, force weaving life as forever cycle of death, and rebirth into tapestry of the world, each seed held in her hands, carrying hope for tomorrow and weight of every farewell ever uttered under golden skies. Hestia tended the hearth fires that blazed in humble homes scattered across the lands, her warmth a silent promise making room for peace and belonging in an all too frequently inharmonious world. Her presence, the unyielding flame that guided weary souls, home a sacred refuge where rest and renewal bloomed soundlessly beneath the canopy of night, a steady in the receding tides of chance and fate, the pulse of sanctuary and welcome. And as the gods watched from their hidden places, the world of man breathed in rhythm to their passion and longing, every softly uttered prayer, every movement of mercy, a strand in the endless music of life, an endless song sung ever so softly, but unbreakable in its power, entwining all that was seen and all that was not seen, all that was dreamed and all that was felt beneath. The boundless sky, the human and divine, striving merging together like rivers flowing into an endless sea. In the silence of night, the fabric between worlds thinned, and the breath of the divine touched the hearts of the bold enough to listen, reminding them there was strength in stillness, and in longing there was sacred flame that could ignite change and set hope. Ablaze in the darkest corners of the earth, a soft ember of faith smoldering low beneath, despondency lighting the way forward when all else failed. The gods did not wish to rule and conquer, but to dance in harmony with the fine beauty of human life in order to honor the holy dance of joy and grief, hope and despair, a dance which spun eternally through time, a dance which held promise of renewal and loveliness in every step, every breath a rhythm echoing in the laughter of children, the tears of the sorrowful, and the whispered prayers offered beneath starlight. And thus the timeless story continued in the presence of stars and gods, in a dance older than time itself, a dance that told of beginnings within all endings of light, imagined of shadow, and of love sufficient to mend the deepest wounds with the softest touch, a story sung over the ages by wind and sea, by mountain and down, a tale recounted with every new morning. And as the dawn's first light stole in upon the sky, the gods withdrew, not in conclusion, but with the gentle gentleness of a lullaby fading into dream, leading the world nestled within the gentle grasp of their affection, a world poised upon the edge of awakening, and wonder waiting to draw anew the promise of new stories breathed within the secret places between heartbeats and the slow unfolding of each dawn as radiance. Under the waking heavens, the mortals traveled shrouded in blankets of mist and hoped their dreams still lingered like the fading reverberation of a song sung upon the wind, their souls bound to the unseen fingers of the gods who marched along with them unseen but never apart. A steady beat beneath the dashing tides of life and time, in the quiet before the sun rose to kiss the ground. The gods gathered again under the curve of the sky, their voices rushing in a chorus of soft sighs. And supplicant whispers, the language of the divine, breathed into existence once again. A sacred song that twined through the weave of the world, uniting the past and present future in a chord of limitless possibility. The eternal breath of creation flowed through all things, the leaves rustling through the rivers, flowing through the still vigilant mountains, standing guard over the infinite dance of seasons, the blessed wheel of birth and death and rebirth, an infinite hymn that echoed in the hearts of those who listened. And in this boundless moment, the gods remembered why they had become larger than myth, larger than tale, larger than name. They had become the living pulse in the still places, in the gaps between worlds, in the stillness where everything begins and ends and begins. Again, their love, the flame which would not be extinguished even by time itself. So the night swept over a boundless and unending sea of stars and stillness, the gods moving unannounced across the currents of existence. Their presence, the gentle surf that washed all toward peace and possibility, a reminder that in life's dance every ending is only a breath before the next beginning, and every shadow contains the possibility of light. And with the dawnbreak, The sacred cradle song was breathed away like the last note of a tune that still echoes in the heart. Long after the music has stopped, the gods retired to their realms, not as conquerors, but as keepers of the eternal flame, the quiet custodians of the tender loveliness that is life itself, a gift, both transitory and infinite. The first light of dawn spread slowly across the horizon, casting light gold on fields and woods and ancient rock temples where the gods moved unseen in darkness. During the night, the world awakened slowly, like a long restrained breath, then released in peaceful wonder, the sky tinted with rose and amber, holding out beginnings, whispered in the gentle rustle of leaves and far away chirping of awakening birds. At this sacred moment, Athena once more stood on a hill, her eyes looking up to the boundless heavens, her heart filled with the unspoken hymn of wisdom that flowed like a brook through the mines of knowledge. Seekers, the slow breaking into consciousness in the obscure recesses of libraries, the spark of understanding lit in the eye of youth, and the soft insistence of those who teach. Apollo's voice carried on the breeze, a soft song intertwining the morning light, each note a thread of sun which enveloped the world in heat. And light his music, a promise that before the face of darkness, beauty endures and truth shines. His lyre strummed with delicate fingers, producing not only music, but hope and comfort in the hearts of those who listen with open hearts. Artemis strode through the waking woods, her feet as light as mist at dawn, her eyes sharp and kind, watching over all animals, large and small. Her arrival aegis of quiet power, a promise made on the wind that the wild woods are holy and free of breath, mingling with the green scent of pine and earth, and the soft murmur of the streams running without end to the sea. Demeter, as fingers brushed the fields in increase, her touch evoking life out of the ground, the cycle of the seasons, revolving like a sacred wheel, the promise of harvest, carried in every grain, and the memory of every seed ever sown in hope. Her love a rough and gentle force, linking earth and heaven in endless round of death and revival, nourishing all that walk under open heavens. Hestia's fire burns constant in the hearths of the lands, a still flame of peace and home in the churning tide of change, her heat a refuge where exhausted hearts find rest, a holy beat making space for the mending of hearts, the gentle light of home. A haven in the great and often solitary universe, where compassion is a fire nurtured through generations upon generations. Hephaestus toiled in the quiet forge, far beneath the mountain, his hammer falling in rhythmic beat, strike after strike molding not only metal, but the very fabric of creation, taking raw materials and fashioning them into tools of hope and beauty, an ineffable art which honors patience and persistence, the transmutation of fire and clay, a testament to the enduring power of making and mending in a world that is forever in flux. Aphrodite's smile ran in gardens and bazaars, finding its way through hearts, like a gentle tide stirring the pluck to love in the face of pain and fear. Her loveliness, not in perfection, but in the relief of contact, the courage of risk a light that can heal wounds and rekindle fires, her existence, a gentle assurance that longing is sacred and transforming a bridge between hearts. Hermes danced lightly between realms, his steps a silver thread, braiding the seen and unseen his voice, the laughter that is shared in secret, the spark of curiosity that sets adventure and connection, a light a messenger of dreams and possibilities shepherding all who travel through the labyrinth of existence, and the mysteries in every light and shadow. The gods met in the high dome of morning, their stories and dreams entwining like constellations drawn across the rousing firmament their lives, a sacred breath in the turning of the earth, an interlude full of endless possibility and quietness of beauty, the ancient dance continuing unbroken, weaving the threads of myth and human lives into a tapestry of wonder and hope. And in the lives of men, hearts stirred to the soft pulses of the unseen but omnipresent divine. Every courtesy, every unspoken prayer, a thread in the great fabric of being, a hymn sung in the vacant spaces between seconds, a sacred music which unites all that lives in the watching eyes of gods and stars, bound together by love as embrace forever. The winds carried their laughter, their tears, their songs of long ago, over mountains and oceans, over fields where children slept under starry blankets and lovers. Kissed in silk-smooth shadows, the holy breath of creation, here in every moment fleeting and wild as a heartbeat, hanging poised on the threshold of the whisper of a sigh, a witness without, voice to the immortally potent forces of desire and love in the universe's infinity. And so the world turned beneath the watchful eye of gods, who didn't love from afar, but from the depths of their being, a tender throb beneath the storm of time. A gentle river carrying all towards light and peace, for in their love was the seed of all things starting afresh infinitely in the waltz of dawn and dusk, the breath of creation blowing eternal and unbroken through all that will be and all that is. Under the surface of ordinary things, deep mysteries churned where fate and will intertwined, the acts of men spreading like the ripples cast when stones are flung into placid lakes, disturbing distant shores of fortune, and the gods stood, by not as rulers, but as spectators to the sacredness in every small act of courage and every silent victory of the soul. From the silent corridors of ruined temples to the laughter of children chasing fireflies in twilight, from the tender sobs cried in silent solitude to the loud cries lifted high in glad chorus of life and love the divine, breathed life into all, entwining the threads of myth among the stuff of mortal hopes. The time-worn story recurring for the umpteenth time, with every dawn as new birth. The velvet night grew darker and wider, embracing the hopes and the fears of generations, the stars twinkling softly as if to whisper, "You are never alone." The myths of gods and men forever interwoven, a cosmic waltz of longing and light that carried the weight of history and the promise of tomorrow in the infinite rhythm of time and remembrance. And in the midst of that endless turning, the gods found not domination, but a shared pulse with all of creation, their stories dissolving into the rhythm of the earth, the quiet between waves, the quiet in a newborn. Breath a love so profound, it held both joy and loss in absolute harmony, like the turning of the seasons, themselves the sacred dance of life and death, bound forever in the world's heart. So the gods communicated through leaves and rivers, in the intensity of fires and the coldness of mornings, their presence not as directive, but as solace, reminding that even in quiet there is potency, and that every ending is only a breath from the next, beginning in the endless song of being, the gentle lullaby which carries all to rest and rebirth. And thus the dawn broke in full pouring light over the slumbering earth, stirring all that had been held in shadow, the gods, drawing back in silence into the hidden places of the world, not as conquerors, but as the guardians of the flame divine, the gentle protectors of the fragile beauty that is life itself, a gift both fleeting and unending, a sacred breath hung between stars and earth. The evening drifted like a hush through the sacred groves where fig trees whispered secrets to the wind, and laurels shimmered in silence each leaf. A small vessel of memory, catching the stories of lovers and warriors and shepherds alike. The very breath of the world seemed to exhale gently as stars began their slow bloom across the sky. Ares did not thunder through the heavens, but sat beneath an ancient oak, his armor laid aside, his gaze heavy with the weight of all battles fought and all yet to come in that moment. He was not a god of rage, but a weary sentinel honoring the silence that follows struggle, and the stillness where peace begins to grow like a tender seed beneath the soil. Athena stood nearby, not in triumph, but in contemplation, her spear resting lightly in her hand as owls stirred softly above her. She did not boast nor command, but watched and listened the great thoughts of mortals passing through her like wind through marble columns, her wisdom, not given but drawn forth from within those who dared to think and question, and hope Poseidon lay beneath the sea, not in tempest, but in dreaming the ocean floor pulsing with the slow heartbeat of the deep. Whales sang in long echoes that stirred ancient truths, and coral grew in patterns too beautiful for reason, his kingdom vast and silent, filled not only with power, but also with loneliness, the kind that knows how to listen. Above the world in cool stillness, Hera walked the clouds, her fingers trailing through veils of mist. She did not wear her crown with pride, but with patience each thunderhead. A memory of loyalty, lost or found her love vast and painful, yet enduring. She watched mortals hold hands in storms and saw divinity flicker in their persistence, to stay bound when all winds tore them apart. Dionysus wandered through vineyards that curled over hills like laughter. In summer twilight, his feet bare his breath scented with crushed grapes. And wild time, he was not chaos, but released the soft loosening of burdens, the reminder that sorrow could dance too, if given music and moonlight, and that the soul was made not only to endure, but to delight. Hades remained in the underworld, not as a tyrant, but as a keeper. He walked gently among shades who whispered of lost joys and unfinished lullabies. His touch quiet, his gaze respectful. He guarded, not death, but memory, the sacred echo of every breath, once drawn, and every name once spoken. He did not steal, but waited, offering rest and stillness in the place where time forgets. Persephone bloomed not in spring alone, but in every moment of her churn, her footsteps. A rhythm of exile and grace, she held both pomegranate, and blossomed sorrow and sweetness, and showed that life was never one thing but many, that rebirth was not a single act, but a soft choosing, repeated in darkness, again and again, and again. Even the forgotten gods stirred in the hush. Of this deep night, Eos brushed the horizon with longing. Nyx lingered at the edges of thought, and Morpheus gathered dreams. Like fallen petals, his wings spread wide over the world, weaving images that soothed the hearts of kings and children. Alike dream by dream, memory by memory, mortals lay still in their beds and on their thresholds, eyes closed not in fear, but in reverence. The scent of oil lamps and rosemary rising softly in the air. The prayers, whispered not to beg, but to thank, to remember, to hope each breath, a promise made to stars and to gods, to the earth, and to each other, to wake again with wonder. The temples held their hush, unbroken their stones, warm with stored sunlight, their altars, bearing offerings not of power, but of gratitude, figs and honey, olive branches, and woven linen, tokens of love from lives lived in imperfection and beauty. Alike nothing needed to be perfect, to be sacred, only sincere. Children dreamed of centaurs and rivers and fields, where lions roamed not with danger, but with majesty, and mothers smiled in their sleep as the hearths crackled low and the night curled around them. Like a story told by a gentle hand, each soul wrapped in its own tapestry of memory and desire, carried forward by the unseen pulse of the divine. The gods leaned close, not with judgment, but with tenderness, listening not for words, but for longing, the kind of longing that binds sky to soil. And dreamed to breath, they heard the rhythm of footsteps on old roads, the hush of lovers parting, the quiet courage of those who rose each morning, not knowing what would come, but still choosing to greet the light. And in the deepest part of the night, where even time seemed to hold its breath, the world turned slowly, a cradle of stone and sea, and sky rocked gently by unseen hands, lullabied by stars, and silence wrapped in the gaze of eternity. Not forgotten, not alone, simply held, softly held. Clouds moved like memory across the moon's face, and the wind gathered the scent of jasmine and old scrolls of salt and skin and sandalwood, passing over fields and forests, temples and homes, carrying with it the breath of 1,000 stories each, one sacred, each one worthy, each one alive in the hush of the gods. No hymn needed to be sung loudly. No incense needed to be burned brightly, for the sacred was already present in the heartbeat, in the quiet, in the small acts of kindness and wonder and choice that mortals carried with them every day, whether they knew or not. The divine walked beside them, not ahead, not above, but beside, step for step, breath for breath. As night began to yield its hold, the sky shifted gently like a sleeper, turning beneath warm covers, colors unfolding like petals of silence, pink and blue and gold, the first birds, stirring not with fanfare, but with shy notes of waking their song, more prayer than performance, soft declarations of being here, of continuing, of simply breathing. And the gods rose with the light, not to proclaim their power, but to bear witness to the miracle of morning, to honor what had passed, and what would come to remind all that no ending was final, and no sorrow was without echo, and that even in stillness, transformation moved like roots beneath the soil, quietly, unceasingly. The last shadows withdrew, not defeated, but complete like dreams, finishing their telling like stories, placing their final period, not with a cry, but with a sigh. And the world awakened, not with noise, but with recognition, remembering without words that something ancient had passed over it, had touched it, had lingered, and it had loved. And in every heart, from the marble steps of temples to the dusty beds of shepherds, a quiet certainty remained, not of gods above, but of grace among, not of perfection, but of presence, not of destiny, but of wonder. And this was the true gift, the soft truth, whispered by the night, the sacred, remembered not in thunder, but in breath. The stars above the ancient world did not burn with haste or fury, but floated in the velvet sea of night, like slow, thoughtful lanterns, drifting across a dream, where the gods whispered and the past still, breathed in the hush of olive groves and the quiet folds of marble temples. The hills wore their silence, like a robe woven from the sighs of centuries, and the earth beneath them hummed with stories too old for words. The roots of cypress trees tangled around forgotten offerings, and the bones of prayers left by hands that once trembled with hope and fear. The wind moved slowly over the fields, as if it too remembered every secret, every name, every cry, and every vow. And as it passed, it touched the skin of the land like a mother, remembering the warmth of a sleeping child, curled within the folds of time. Even the moon seemed gentler, softer, as though she paused in her path across the heavens, to listen to the ancient lullaby of the land below, and her light draped the world in silver threads each, one tied to the lives of those who came and went in the rhythm of birth and dusk and return. Beneath that sacred sky, where no noise dared rise too loud, and no step broke the calm, the presence of the divine moved in ways unseen, slipping between shadows and leaves like breath, like thought, like the hush between heartbeats. It grows heavy when something greater is near. The gods did not walk with fire in their hands, nor lightning at their heels, but instead their essence lingered in the places most quiet and still, in the spaces where silence gathers thick like incense, and the air feels like the echo of a forgotten hymn. It was here that Zeus, not the ruler with thunder, but the father of all memory, stood not with anger, but with eyes full of time, watching as mortals loved and lost and tried again and again, each one carrying a spark from the same eternal fire. He once lit into the sky. He no longer roared commands across the world, but watched with the patience of mountains, letting the rivers of fate wind, as they would, knowing that every sorrow, every joy, every small act of kindness bent the path of the cosmos just as surely as any divine decree. Here it too moved differently, now not as the jealous queen of myths, but as the quiet keeper of sacred bonds, her hands no longer clenched in fury, but outstretched in tenderness, tracing the fragile thread between two souls who chose to share the storm and the stillness. She lingered in the rooms where lovers slept, and in the doorways where mothers waited, her gaze wide with a love deeper than possession, a love forged in the long dark hours of waiting, when hearts break and mend again and again, like clay molded by fire and breath. Her voice did not rise in argument, but settled gently into the bones of the world, reminding every creature that to stay, to try again, to forgive and be forgiven, was an act not of weakness, but of sacred defiance in the face of the fleeting. She watched over not only weddings, but reconciliations, not only unions, but the moments where silence was broken by a whispered, "I am still here." And her grace lived not in ceremony, but in the simple, enduring presence of one soul beside another, despite the winds of time. Athena, the shining one who once rose fully formed from the brow of her father, no longer marched in armor across battlefields, but instead sat in the corners of study rooms and beside firelight, where stories were told and questions began to bloom like morning lily. Her wisdom did not shout. It unfolded slowly, in the minds of the curious. The brave, the gentle ones who asked not for power, but for understanding, who chose to see the world not as it had been declared, but as it truly was beneath the surface of things. She guided not only heroes, but healers, not only kings, but quiet thinkers whose ideas would take generations to flower, her presence known, not by trumpet or owl, but by the stillness that descends when someone finds the right word after so long searching. She was not the goddess of war, but the guardian of insight, and her spear now pierced not enemies, but illusion, cutting through confusion, until what remained was the simple bright truth trembling like dew on the tip of a green leaf at dawn. And Dionysus, the wild god once feared and adored in equal measure, was no longer the bringer of chaos, but the companion of transformation, the one who reminded the weary soul that sometimes losing oneself was the only way to be found again, beneath the masks we all must wear. He danced not in frenzy, but in joy, not in forgetfulness, but in deep memory, his feet pressing gently into the grass of groves, where mortals gathered not to escape the world, but to remember the pulse of it beneath their skin, beneath their sorrow. He poured not wine for madness, but for healing, each cup a chalice of release of laughter that rose from the chest, like birds startled into song by the morning sun, and in that laughter wounds, softened like wax, warmed by kindness. His voice was not a shout, but a melody ancient and slow, and each note touched something buried, something old, something in need of remembering, and through that music he carried us back to the part of ourselves we forgot we had left behind. Aphrodite moved through this realm, too, not with the seduction of myth, but with the gentleness of touch, not as a temptress, but as the keeper of all forms of beauty, especially those not seen with the eyes, but felt in the small shiver when something true passes near. Her love was not a spell, but a balm, not a conquest, but an invitation to rest, to soften, to be known. She lived in the eyes of the one who waits, in the arms of the one who listens, in the heart that opens even when it fears what might enter. She tended not only to lovers, but to artists, to those who shaped light into color and sound into comfort, and gesture into grace. And each time someone looked at something ordinary and saw something sacred, it was her presence whispering, "Yes, this too is holy." And in that way, she walked not in temples of marble, but in kitchens and gardens and dreams in the quiet. Awe that comes when two hands meet and no words are needed for the soul to bloom like a flower in gentle sun. Even Ares, the god of war, who once fed on conquest and glory, found a different silence here, a quiet beyond the clash of weapons, a stillness that did not demand victory, but honored the weight carried by those who fought for peace instead of power. He stood not in fields of battle, but beside fathers who chose gentleness, sons who chose not to strike lovers, who walked away from wrath, and in those moments he found a strength deeper than any war ever waged. He no longer asked for blood, but for courage, the courage to stay. When leaving is easy to listen, when rage is loud to love, when hurt has made the heart wary, and in these small, fierce acts, he saw the future held not by armies, but by those who chose mercy. And so he lingered beside the brave, not the brutal, beside the strong, not the cruel. And his legacy was no longer carved in stone, but written softly in every choice to protect instead of destroy. As these gods moved slowly through the folds of the world unseen, but ever near, the old myths unraveled, not into nothing, but into something more tender. More lasting, they became not stories of what once was, but songs of what still is. Each tale became a rhythm, a breath, a gentle reminder that the divine had never truly left, but had simply become quieter, more intimate, walking now, not before us, but within us, in the deep chambers of thought, in the quiet places of the soul. The temples may have fallen and the offerings turned to dust, but the spirit behind them still stirred in the soft corners of mourning, in the hands that create, and the hearts that forgive, in the small acts of wonder we pass along like candles in the dark. And so even now, when we close our eyes and let the world grow, still we may yet hear the ancient voices not shouting from the sky, but murmuring from the roots of the earth, the leaves of the trees, the gentle turning of stars that remember every name we have ever been. Whispers of the gods, a journey through the eternal realms of Greek mythology. In the beginning, before the winds swept across the earth, before the waves kissed the jagged shores, before the stars were hung like silver beads in the dark heavens, there was only chaos, a formless void, a silent space that held the breath of all things to come. It was not darkness, nor was it light. It simply was a timeless expanse, without boundary or shape, and from this silence and stillness came Gaia the earth herself, born not with pain, but with inevitability, her body stretched wide and fertile, her spirit vast and patient. She was the foundation upon which all would walk, all would war, all would love. And with Gaia came Uranus, the sky eternal and high. Embracing her with every gaze and whisper, he covered her with a vault of blue by day and jeweled velvet. By night, his voice was thunder, and his sigh the breeze. Together they birthed children mighty and strange, monstrous and divine, the Titans vast and proud, Cronus and Rhea, Oceanus and Thea, and more, each stepping forth from the womb of earth and the kiss of sky, with purpose in their bones and power in their veins. They walked the newborn land, tall as mountains, fierce as storms, their eyes shining with an ageless knowing. But Uranus grew fearful of his own offspring, their strength, their number, their hunger for destiny. He buried them deep within. Gaia, who groaned with the pain of suppression with each heartbeat, the weight of potential throbbed within her, until one day Cronus, her boldest son, took a sickle and rose up, slicing open the sky, casting Uranus into memory and silence from the severed edge above. Uranus sprang forth new life, furies and nymphs, and Aphrodite, born from sea foam and longing beauty, made flesh, rising from the waves, with eyes that saw beyond the veil of time. Cronus ruled, then sharp and wary. He took Rhea as his queen, and they bore the gods Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and last Zeus. But Cronus was haunted by the echo of betrayal, fearing he too would be undone by his children. He swallowed them whole, each one, descending into the prison of his gut, until only Zeus remained hidden by Rhea, nurtured by nymphs and goats, on a mountain wild and high. He grew strong and clever, his eyes flashing like the storm he would become. When time was ripe, Zeus returned, not as a boy, but as a force, a whisper that became thunder, a breeze that became a gale. He tricked Cronus and freed his siblings from that shadowed belly, and with them rose a rebellion. Titans against gods, sky-shaking battles that cracked the earth and boiled the seas for 10 years. They clashed until the heavens tilted, and the gods stood victorious, the Titans cast down into Tartarus, the deepest pit guarded by monsters and memory. From Olympus the gods reigned, a family divine and flawed. Majestic and petty, their stories are woven into the wind, and sea into the roots of olive trees and the dust of ancient stones. Hera, the queen, jealous and regal, with eyes sharp as owl feathers. Poseidon, the earth-shaker, restless as the tide his moods shaping coastlines. And drowning pride, Demeter, the mother of harvests, mourning and joyous in rhythms of seed and scythe. Hades, brooding beneath the world, with his throne of silence and crown of shadow. And Zeus, above all his voice, the law, his will, the weather. He held the thunder in his grasp and justice in his gaze, yet he wandered, heart first, chasing beauty and lust across fields and skies, his conquests divine and mortal, leaving trails of legends behind every child of his. A thread in the vast tapestry of myth, Athena sprang from his mind armored, and wise, full-grown and calm, her gaze colder than marble and sharper than the spear she held. She built cities, shaped thought, and spoke only when silence failed. Apollo, golden and bright, moved across the sky with his chariot of sun, singing songs of prophecy and light his twin. Artemis ran beside shadows and moon, her arrows quiet and true, protector of wild beasts. And sacred silence, their stories circle like the stars' patterns, repeating destinies, echoing through temples and poems. Dionysus danced into madness and ecstasy. His feet bear his crown of ivy swaying. He shattered order with joy and rebuilt sorrow with song. Aphrodite, touched hearts with longing, her smile enough to spark war, her sigh enough to calm it. Eros flitted near, drawing invisible lines between souls, making mortals and gods alike fall into the river of desire. Hephaestus the smith limped through fire and forge, building beauty from agony, crafting thunderbolts and thrones love unreturned. But duty unwavering Hermes ran on winds, laughing at borders and secrets, guiding souls and stealing moments with a wink. The myths are rivers, they do not end, only bend and blend, winding through the sleep of empires and the dreams of children in every whisper of breeze, through leaves, in every flash of lightning, in every ache of love or sting of betrayal. There is a fragment of their story, each tale another petal from the eternal blossom of myth. Persephone walks through seasons, her footsteps soft yet certain. She holds both death and rebirth in her palms, her gaze split between gloom and bloom. Orpheus plays his lyre, and the stones weep, the trees lean in, and even the gates of Hades shiver. He looks back not from doubt, but from the unbearable weight of love, his song lingering. Like the last warmth of twilight, Narcissus bends to kiss his reflection, and becomes a flower cursed and perfect forever. Echo fades into sound, yearning unheard, always returning but never received. Theseus threads the labyrinth Minotaur, roaring in darkness, Ariadne forgotten, yet forever remembered, in the spiral of choices and sacrifice. Oedipus blinds himself not from guilt, but from the cruel brilliance of knowing the truth, etched in fate, deeper than skin, deeper than blood. Fates themselves sit weaving in silence, their threads crossing without favor, without pause. Clotho spins, Lachesis measures, Atropos cuts. Not even the gods can bribe them, not even time can silence them. So sleep now beneath their stories, sleep beneath the moon that watched them sleep, with the stars that heard their secrets. Let your breath slow with the pulse of Olympus, let the weight of time cradle you like the arms of Gaia herself. The myths will hold you not with noise, but with rhythm, not with answers, but with wonder. The gods do not need belief to live. They exist in the telling, in the remembering, in the closing of your eyes when the world fades and only dreams remain. Let the lyre fade softly. Let the wings of Hermes carry you gently. Let the sea whisper with Poseidon's sigh, and the night bloom with Artemis' grace. Sleep now in the cradle of myth sleep. Now where the gods still walk and whisper, where every dream is a temple and every breath a hymn. The ancient stories woven from the very fabric of the Aegean Sea carried the voices of gods and heroes whose deeds shaped not just the land, but the hearts of all who dwelled beneath the endless sky, their legends alive in the whisper of olive leaves, the sparkle of sunlit waves, and the quiet murmur of ancient stones, telling tales of courage and love, loss and triumph. These were no mere myths, but the living heartbeat of a civilization, their rhythm beating softly beneath the stars, a lullaby sung for restless souls seeking solace in the eternal dance between night and day, light and shadow. The gods of Olympus did not sit aloof in distant palaces, untouched by mortal plight. Instead, they moved like gentle currents, weaving invisibly through the lives of men and women, touching hopes and fears, dreams and desires' presence. A subtle force that stirred the changing seasons, coaxed the growth of crops, and witnessed the rise and fall of empires. In every silent prayer, in every tear shed, in every whispered wish, a divine thread bound past, present, and future into a tapestry shimmering with light and darkness, the sacred fabric of all that was known and all that remained forever mysterious. Each story told beneath the ancient stars was a thread in this vast web of meaning, a reflection of the human condition mirrored in divine drama, the struggles of gods, reflecting the triumphs and tragedies of mortal hearts, the lust for power, the ache of love, the courage to face the unknown, and the wisdom born of suffering. The myths whispered not just tales of old, but lessons breathed into the very soul of the earth, lessons carried on the wind, the waves, the rising and setting sun, weaving an unending song that called each listener into a deeper knowing of themselves and their place within the great unfolding. The presence of the gods was not limited to towering temples or sacred groves. It was found in the smallest acts of kindness, in the courage of the vulnerable, in the creativity of the brokenhearted, in the quiet moments of reflection and connection. The divine breathed through every gesture of love and every act of forgiveness, reminding mortals that the sacred was not separate from the everyday, but hidden within the ordinary, waiting to be seen, to be felt, to be embraced. The great mountain of Olympus stood, not just as a physical peak, but as a symbol of the meeting place, where heaven and earth intertwined, where mortal and divine danced the endless dance of creation and destruction, birth and death, joy and sorrow. The mountain was a living testament to the paradoxes that shape existence, a place where thunder roared and gentle breezes whispered, where the fierce strength of gods met the delicate fragility of human life. Each god and goddess carried their own sacred story, their own essence that rippled through the world in countless ways. Athena, the wise warrior goddess, whose gaze cut through, illusion inspiring seekers of truth and justice to rise with courage and compassion. Her presence a guiding light through the labyrinth of ignorance. Apollo, the radiant healer and artist, whose music wove harmony from chaos, soothing the wounds of body and soul. And Artemis, the fierce protector whose footsteps left no trace yet, whose power shielded the wild places, the forgotten, the innocent. Embodying freedom, grace, and quiet strength, Demeter, the nurturing mother whose love coaxed life from barren soil, teaching mortals the eternal rhythms of loss and renewal, reminding all that grief was a pathway to deeper love. Hades, the quiet ruler of the underworld, who balanced justice with mercy, holding the secrets of transformation and rebirth. Hermes, the clever messenger whose laughter and wit bridged worlds, opening hidden doors to adventure and change, weaving invisible threads that connected all living things in the endless web of being. In the twilight moments, when the sky blushed with the first colors of dusk and night settled softly over the land, the presence of the gods was felt most keenly in the hush that wrapped the earth. The soft rustling of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, the gentle beating of a sleeping heart. These were the sacred spaces between worlds, the liminal places where mortal dreams touched divine mysteries, and the stories of tomorrow began to take shape beneath the ever-turning stars. And so the saga of gods and mortals spun on a living tapestry, alive with light and shadow, pain and joy, courage and fear. It was a timeless poem etched in the winds, the waters, the bones of the earth, and the hearts of all who dared to dream beyond the seen. A story whispered gently across the ages, a lullaby that called every soul to remember that in the endless dance of life and death, in the meeting of shadow and light, hope was always held a promise, nestled in the breath before dawn. A sacred song that cradled us all into being and into rest. Yet beyond the familiar tales lay deeper currents beneath the surface of myths, the unseen forces that shape the pulse of existence, the mysteries of fate and free will, the weaving of destiny in threads. Too fine for mortal eyes to grasp, the gods watched, not as masters, but as dancers caught in the endless rhythm, their stories layered like echoes within echoes, calling each listener to look beyond the veil, to see the divine spark flickering in the heart of all things. The sea itself, a vast mirror reflecting the dreams of gods and mortals, alike its waves carrying whispers of ancient voyages, and lost loves of battles fought beneath moonlit skies, and the soft songs of sirens, weaving enchantments in the salt air. The waters held memory, like a great chest of treasures, waiting patiently for those willing to dive beneath the surface, to uncover the shimmering truth hidden in the depths. The forests where Artemis roamed were alive with secrets older than time, where the rustle of leaves spoke of guardianship and freedom, where every branch and stone held the breath of those who had come before a sanctuary for the wild and the gentle. A sacred dance between life and death, the ever-turning cycle, witnessed by stars that had watched kingdoms rise and fall like fleeting shadows on the ancient earth in the quiet hearths tended by Hestia. The flame burned steady, a beacon of warmth and belonging, a reminder that even in a world of gods and monsters, The simple acts of kindness and care held their own kind of magic. A sacred fire that could heal wounds unseen and light the path through the darkest nights where fears whispered and dreams waited patiently to be born. The laughter of Hermes echoed through the air, a playful thread weaving joy and mischief into the fabric of the everyday, opening doors to new paths and possibilities where the unexpected could become the source of transformation and growth. His presence, a reminder that life was as much about wonder and curiosity as it was about fate and destiny, the dance of chaos and order intertwined in perfect balance. The underworld, ruled by Hades, was not a realm of mere darkness, but a place of profound transformation, where souls shed the weight of their mortal lives and were reborn into new forms. A sacred passage where grief met acceptance and endings blossomed into beginnings. The quiet keeper of balance who honored the delicate dance of shadow and light in the eternal cycle of existence. All these threads intertwined in the grand tapestry of Greek mythology, a living mosaic that spoke to the deepest parts of the human spirit, calling each soul to find their own place in the eternal story, to walk with courage into the unknown, to embrace both joy and sorrow as necessary parts of the dance that is life itself, a journey woven through time and space by the hands of gods and mortals together. So as the stars wheel slowly across the velvet sky and the night cradles the earth in its gentle embrace, the stories of Olympus continue to sing soft and sure, like a lullaby for the restless, a song of hope and remembrance, carried on the breath of the wind, the ripple of the sea, and the quiet beating of the human heart, forever inviting us to dream, to wonder, and to believe in the enduring power of love and light that shapes all worlds seen and unseen. The vast expanse of the Aegean Sea stretched endlessly beneath a sky painted with soft hues of dawn. Its waves whispered ancient secrets as they caressed rugged shores and forgotten isles where heroes once walked and gods once breathed. The salt-laden breeze carried the echoes of battles long past, of loves born in the glow of sunset and of mysteries hidden beneath the shimmering surface. The sea itself, a living testament to the eternal dance between mortal striving and divine will, it sang a song woven from the threads of time, a melody that rose and fell with the tides carrying with it the dreams of sailors, poets, and dreamers alike, whose hearts beat in rhythm the pulse of the cosmos. Far beyond the sparkling waters, the towering peaks of Mount Olympus rose like a silent promise against the awakening sky, its summit lost in swirling mists and crowned with the golden light of early morning, a place where earth met heaven and the boundary between mortal and immortal blurred. Here the gods moved unseen, yet ever present their laughter like distant thunder, their whispers like the rustling of leaves, their power a quiet current, flowing through all things, binding the fates of men and the destinies of stars in an intricate web of connection and meaning. Beneath this sacred mountain, the forest stretched deep and ancient, where Artemis roamed free her steps, as light as the falling leaves, her eyes sharp and watchful, her presence a shield for the wild creatures who called these woods home. She moved with grace and purpose, embodying the fierce tenderness of nature itself, the eternal cycle of growth, decay, and renewal echoing in every breath. She took in the silence that cradled the forest, the secrets of life whispered softly branches and streams, a sacred dance unfolding beneath the watchful gaze of the moon. In the golden fields Demeter walked with gentle hands, tracing the ripening grain, her heart attuned to the rhythm of the seasons, each seed a promise, each harvest a hymn of gratitude, her love a force that sustained life through hardship and abundance, alike teaching mortals that even in loss there is hope, that from the barren earth new growth will always arise, her spirit intertwined with the soil, the sun, and the sky, a living embodiment of nurture and resilience. Amid the warmth of humble hearths, Hestia tended her sacred flame steady and bright, a beacon of comfort and belonging in a world often torn by turmoil. Her fire a symbol of home and peace, a quiet sanctuary where weary souls found rest and renewal. The soft glow of her presence, weaving through the lives of strangers and kin alike. A reminder that even the smallest light can dispel the deepest darkness, and that love is often found in the simple act of keeping a flame alive. High above the bustling world, Hephaestus labored in his forge beneath the mountain, his hammer striking metal with deliberate grace, each spark a testament to creation, born from fire and toil his craft, transforming raw elements into tools of hope and beauty wonders shaped not for war, but for the promise of new beginnings his hands marked. By the sacred dance of destruction and renewal, a reminder that from the harshest flames emerge the strongest forms, and that the art of making is an act of love and defiance against oblivion. Near the shores where the waves kissed the land, Aphrodite moved like a gentle breeze, her laughter flowing. Through gardens, marketplaces, and hidden corners, her beauty not found in perfection, but in the courage to love amidst fear and pain. Her presence a whisper of hope, a balm for broken hearts, a reminder that desire is the sacred language of connection, capable of healing as much as it can wound her spirit. Woven into the song of the sea, the bloom of roses, and the beating of countless hearts seeking union and understanding, Hermes, the fleet-footed messenger, slipped silently between worlds. His steps light and swift, his voice, the laughter shared in secret, the spark of curiosity that ignites adventure, and the threads of connection that bind all living things. His role a bridge between realms seen and unseen, guiding journeys great and small through the labyrinth of life and dreams, a playful spirit reminding mortals that the path is as important as the destination, and that change is the only constant in the eternal flow of existence. Beneath the earth, in the shadowed realm, Hades ruled with quiet authority, a keeper of balance and transformation, where souls found rest and renewal, not a place of torment, but a sacred passage through which all must travel. His realm a reflection of the cycles that govern life and death, grief and acceptance. His gaze steady and compassionate, holding the mysteries of the afterlife and the promise of rebirth, a reminder that endings are but beginnings in disguise, and that in darkness lies the seed of light. Apollo, with lyre in hand, cast melodies that wove through valleys and hills, his music a golden thread, stitching harmony into the fabric of the world, a call to awaken the beauty hidden in plain sight in the dance of shadows and the song of birds. His notes a balm for the soul, a beacon guiding seekers of truth and light through the labyrinth of existence. His presence a radiant flame, illuminating the path of creativity, healing, and revelation. In the quiet moments, when the world held its breath beneath the vast canopy of stars, the gods gathered not in grand halls, but in the spaces. Between moments, their stories and dreams intertwining like constellations drawn across the night sky in their stillness. They held the breath of the world, a sacred pause filled with endless possibility and gentle grace, a reminder that divinity is found not in thunderous decree, but in the soft pulse of life flowing through all things. And far below in the mortal realm, hearts beat in rhythm with the gods, unseen in every act of kindness, every whispered hope, every silent prayer in darkness. There was a spark of the divine, a reminder that the power of love and longing was the thread that wove all existence into one unending song the winds carried. Their laughter, their tears, their ancient songs over mountains and seas, across fields where children dreamed beneath blankets of stars, and lovers met in shadows. Soft as silk, the sacred breath of creation alive in every moment, fragile and fierce as a heartbeat held just before a sigh. So the world turned beneath the watchful gaze of gods, who loved not from afar, but from within their presence. A quiet pulse beneath the rush of time, a gentle current, carrying all toward light and peace, for in their love was the seed of all things, beginning again endlessly in the dance of dawn and dusk. Thus the eternal story of gods and mortals continued, weaving a living tapestry, rich with light and shadow, joy and sorrow, courage and fear, a timeless poem etched in the winds, the waters, the bones of the earth, and the hearts of all who dared to dream. Beyond the scene, a lullaby that called every soul to remember that, in the endless dance of life and death, in the meeting of shadow and light. Hope was always held a promise, nestled in the breath before dawn, a sacred song cradling all into being and into rest. The twilight deepened softly across the ancient lands where gods and mortals once danced in timeless. Embraced beneath the vast dome of sky, now tinged with the fading light of day. The air hummed with stories whispered in the rustling leaves, and the gentle sigh of rivers winding through valleys. Held in the tender grasp of night, the world breathed slowly wrapped in the sacred hush that comes when the veil between worlds grows thin and dreams begin to stir like soft wings brushing against the heart of sleep from the high peaks of eye. Olympus to the quiet shores kissed by endless seas. The presence of the divine lingered not as thunderous decree, but as a gentle current flowing beneath the pulse of life in the laughter of children. The warmth of hearth fires, the courage of those who faced darkness with hope in their eyes, the gods had softened into echoes. Into the very breath of the earth and sky, a song sung low and steady across the ages. A lullaby woven from the threads of longing and love, sorrow and joy, woven deep into the fabric of being itself. The tales of Zeus and Hera of Poseidon and Demeter of Apollo, Artemis, Athena, and all the radiant pantheon no longer thundered as commands, but breathed as gentle reminders that life is a sacred dance of light and shadow, of strength and vulnerability, of endings and new beginnings, each story a thread in the vast tapestry of existence, teaching that even in the fiercest storms there is grace, and in the deepest night, the promise of dawn that the love that shapes worlds is often found in quiet acts of kindness and in the courage to dream when the night seems endless. In the silent spaces between heartbeats, the gods whispered still through the rustle of olive branches, the shimmer of starlit waves, the soft steps of those who walk with care and wonder the sacredness of all things. Small and fleeting the moments of connection that bind us to each other and to the mysteries beyond the veil. These whispers carried on the breeze like ancient hymns, calling each soul to rest, to remember that in every ending there is a seed of beginning, that the journey of life is endless, and that the divine dwells not just in legends, but in the tender beating of every mortal heart. As sleep deepened across the lands, the stars shone with a gentle glow, their light a soft caress upon the weary world, a cosmic embrace that held the dreams of gods. And men intertwined in the eternal dance of creation and rest, the universe itself seemed to exhale a breath of peace and promise, a sacred pause where time folded softly upon itself, and the story of all things was held gently cradled in the quiet arms of night. So now as your eyes grow heavy and your breath slows to the rhythm of the ancient earth, may you be carried on the wings of myth and memory, through landscapes where heroes once walked and gods still linger, not as distant figures, but as warm companions in the vast unfolding dream of existence. May their stories soothe your spirit and their love enfold your heart, a reminder that you are never truly alone, that within you burns the same eternal flame that once lit the halls of Olympus, and that in the gentle embrace of sleep all things are possible. All wounds may heal, and every soul may find its way home. Rest now in the quiet grace of this timeless tale. Let the soft murmur of waves, the rustle of leaves, and the whisper of ancient songs guide you into a deep and peaceful slumber, carried on the breath of gods, and carried forever in the heart of the stars, a lullaby older than time itself, a sacred song to cradle you into the sweetest of dreams. And the gentle dawn of a new day, twilight deepened softly across the ancient lands where gods and mortals once danced in timeless. Embraced beneath the vast dome of sky now tinged with the fading light of day, the air hummed with stories whispered in the rustling leaves and the gentle sigh of rivers. Winding through valleys held in the tender grasp of night, the world breathed, slowly wrapped in the sacred hush that comes when the veil between worlds grows thin and dreams begin to stir like soft wings brushing against the heart of sleep. From the high peaks of Olympus to the quiet shores kissed by endless seas, the presence of the divine lingered not as thunderous decree, but as a gentle current flowing beneath the pulse of life in the laughter of children, the warmth of hearth fires, the courage of those who face darkness with hope in their eyes. The gods had softened into echoes into the very breath of the earth and sky, a song sung low and steady. Across the ages a lullaby woven from the threads of longing and love, sorrow and joy, woven deep into the fabric of being itself. The tales of Zeus and Hera of Poseidon, and Demeter of Apollo, Artemis, Athena, and all the radiant pantheon, no longer thundered as commands, but breathed as gentle reminders that life is a sacred dance of light and shadow, of strength and vulnerability, of endings and new beginnings. Each story a thread in the vast tapestry of existence, teaching that even in the fiercest storms there is grace, and in the deepest night the promise of dawn, that the love that shapes worlds is often found in quiet acts of kindness and in the courage to dream when the night seems endless. In the silent spaces between heartbeats, the gods whispered still through the rustle of olive branches, the shimmer of starlit waves, the soft steps of those who walk with care and wonder the sacredness of all things. Small and fleeting the moments of connection that bind us to each other, and to the mysteries beyond the veil, these whispers carried on the breeze like ancient hymns, calling each soul to rest, to remember that in every ending there is a seed of beginning, that the journey of life is endless, and that the divine dwells not just in legends, but in the tender beating of every mortal heart. As sleep deepened across the lands, the stars shone with a gentle glow, their light a soft caress upon the weary world, a cosmic embrace that held the dreams of gods and men intertwined in the eternal dance of creation, and rest the universe itself seemed to exhale a breath of peace and promise a sacred pause, where time folded softly upon itself, and the story of all things was held gently cradled in the quiet arms of night. So now, as your eyes grow heavy and your breath slows to the rhythm of the ancient earth, may you be carried on the wings of myth and memory, through landscapes where heroes once walked and gods still linger, not as distant figures, but as warm companions in the vast unfolding dream of existence. May their stories soothe your spirit and their love enfold your heart, a reminder that you are never truly alone, that within you burns the same eternal flame that once lit the halls of Olympus, and that in the gentle embrace of sleep all things are possible, all wounds may heal, and every soul may find its way home. Rest now in the quiet grace of this timeless tale. Let the soft murmur of waves, the rustle of leaves, and the whisper of ancient songs guide you into a deep and peaceful slumber, carried on the breath of gods, and carried forever in the heart of the stars. A lullaby older than time itself, a sacred song to cradle you into the sweetest of dreams and the gentle dawn of a new day.